Josh, thank you so much for being here, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of this incredible company. I've been doing as much background research as I can on Aries Tech, and I'm super stoked to get into this conversation because it's been quite some time that I've interviewed someone on the harmful effects of non-native EMFs that are ubiquitous in our environment and modern life. If you're listening to or watching this podcast, you're likely exposed to non-native EMFs. But we're also talking off camera a little bit about the brilliance of the human body and how the body is so intelligently designed and the need to stay out of fear, and also solutions to these strategies, which I know Aries Tech presents a solution to non-native EMFs. So if you could just start with sharing your background and how you got involved with Aries Tech, I think that'd be a good place to jump off.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This has already been a lot of fun, and we are just started to record. So I always enjoy coming into a space and getting to know the people, and we have some friends here, and the energy, the vibe, like of just what's going on, you're just ready to go. Yeah. And sometimes you enter a space and you start to talk with people and you're like, this is going to be work.
Yeah.
And so far, I don't feel like work yet. So
it's all play. So it's all play.
We're off to a good start. Yeah. The beginning is I've built my whole career, 25 years on the internet, like early days. And you go all the way back when I was in school in late 90s and just fell in love with the promise of the internet, the vision of the internet. I really got into it right away. Really got into the idea of what it could be. Mm-hmm. And just this idea of like the Wild West of information and communication. It was mind-boggling. And it was also really interesting time where, I'm in high school and you're kind of still in this, like, this is what school is. This follows this formula. It always has, it always will. And the resistance of the internet. And I can remember one time submitting like a report, like literally I got from the internet, and the teacher not knowing, but then calling me aside and be like, I literally plagiarized it, right? Yeah. Like this is, it was just like information. I get it. Copy, paste, submit. I'm done, right? Like high school. And my teacher pulled me aside like, what is this? Like, how did you get this? Right. And because at the time you would not have photocopied an encyclopedia and like submitted that. This was like typed out. Like he can't comprehend how I got this information. Yeah. And that was just one of those moments where I was like, you just saw how disrupted the world was. And I have at that point I'm in high school, I have this young brain, and all I'm thinking about is what can I do with this? Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to be a part of it. So I did, like everybody else, I had like a regular job, selling stuff and retail and things like that. I actually worked with the Utah Jazz for a long time. I loved that job, had a really good time. I learned a lot about like the psychology of selling and how people navigate a shopping experience.
What era were you with the Jazz?
Late 90s, like John Stockton, Malone era, dude.
Dude, you know what's so wild? John Stockton interviewed me on his podcast a year and a half ago.
Way.
And even more wild, my dad used to be a college basketball coach, and my dad when he was coaching at the University of Idaho, I think they were playing against Gonzaga at that time or something like that, and John Stockton was there, so it was like a weird full circle moment because I had met him when I was like 6. Yeah, got him to sign a jersey.
You got him to sign something because he's some back in the day did not do a lot of autographs.
I heard he was an asshole. Back
he was difficult. Yeah. He was difficult
on the court and off the court.
He was consistent though.
Yeah,
and so someone on the inside the organization, it was that's just who he was, and he was consistent. And when he wasn't consistent, it actually created problems. So the idea of being consistent was actually really good for him. And people just knew at that point, especially in Utah, because he was always there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you got an autograph from him.
Dude, I did. Yeah. When I was younger, I was like 6 or 7 or something like that. And it was just funny, the full circle moment of him and Ken Ruckers, former Green Bay Packers player. They had a podcast together. Yeah. They interviewed me. I was like, John, you're definitely not going to remember this, but my dad, blah, blah, blah. And I told him the whole story. It's just funny. That's awesome that you worked with them during that era.
Yeah. The Jazz were an awesome organization. It was one of those small market teams. Everyone in the state would get behind the Jazz. I grew up in Oregon, so I was Trailblazers through and through, and I would the guys from the Jazz would always give me the courtside seats when Trailblazers would come to town.
Cool. That's cool.
And I'd be in my gear, and everyone knew it was me because they were Jazz seats.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. It was a lot of fun. And that was the Jordan shot. That was the whole period, the Sacramento Kings series. Anyways, so I say that because I think, I don't know, this is a complete tangent, but I think those that are in that era, like I'm, let's say 45-ish. So
I love that.
So late, let's say I'm born in 78, 79. That's because I'm a December kid. And I just distinctly remember life before and after a cell phone. Yeah. Like I had an semi-adult life without the cell phone. I remember seeing the tablets, the Palm Pilots, the Blackberries, and thinking, again, my mind was like, this is extremely disruptive. This will be extremely disruptive. And then when the iPhone came out, you're like, it's getting closer. iPhone 3 with photos, game over. It was like, having been in that world, in that environment, you saw these giant leaps. And AI is one of those moments right now. Yes. Like, you're just like, I'm scared for the young kids right now in high school. What do you even do?
Dude,
like right now?
I was just thinking that the other day. Like, don't get me wrong. Thus far, there's been several ways AI has been beneficial 100%. To some respects. Like, of course, but the slippery slope of losing the ability to critically think and losing intuitive capacity as well, especially as, you know, my podcast in the truth, health, and freedom space, the sort of the cross section between that. As AI is seeming to reveal a lot of truth regarding some things that are typically buried in the mainstream, the slippery slope is then, oh my gosh, I'm just going to turn to AI for all the answers regarding what is true. Yeah. Then outsourcing critical thought to AI, thinking AI is giving you objective truth. And AI could be subtly, or in the future could be hijacked to program us, but irrespective of if it is giving objective truth in air quotes based on the data that it was programmed with, which is also a whole nother conversation. Right. You're still losing your critical thinking capacity and you're losing your intuitive capacity. And that is so scary to me.
It's like navigation, meaning like, I don't know. I don't go anywhere without turning my map on.
Same. I'm guilty of that too.
But when I was a kid, I could remember infinite phone numbers, directions. I'd navigate LA with actual maps, and then I would get to know I knew it, right? And now I go back to the same places, and I'm like, I don't have a clue where to go or how to get there, or which, it's kind of wild, right? Like, you just deprogram, you make room for information that you think is valuable, and then get rid of information that's no longer valuable. Right. I think it's really interesting. So on the topic of AI, though, if you kind of go back and just look what I just said about, like, you saw the early internet, you saw how connectivity and the speed of connectivity started to alter the internet as well. So like 28.8 modem to 56 to the if you worked in an office that had a T1 line and you had, you know, like, you couldn't get enough of the internet, right? It just was transformational as speed of the internet changed. And then as broadband got into every home and high-speed internet got in every home, being at that age where I can remember life before and after, like, not just like I was 10 and I kind of remember having a black and white TV and a not black and white TV and a tube TV and a flat, like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking like transformational to culture, to learning, to just functioning in the world was transformed. And then again, I would say really the iPhone 3 was really the next big one. And then, and like I said, I think we're experiencing it right now. I think that pattern recognition that I have, I look at AI as, I'm not really worried about it for me because of the foundation that I have. Again, the pattern recognition, I think that you mentioned like critical thinking. I had an experience just this weekend with Grok 4 where I felt like the first time I may not be smarter than the AI. And what I mean by that is the AI has like the vast information. I don't have that, obviously, but how I organize it to create a specific outcome or to build towards something that I don't know what that looks like yet. Grok 4 was the first time where I felt like it was doing the actual thinking.
Wow.
Previously anyone that has any real good experience of just, hacking on ChatGPT or the other ones, you end up almost into a spiral, and you end up shrinking down this world that you've created through your prompts to where it just starts repeating and echo chambering itself.
For sure.
And you start to diminish the results, right?
Yeah, for sure.
With this version of Grok, it was that first moment where I would say it was the first time where I felt like, not as excited as I was, but almost like, but then quickly shifting back and saying, okay, how do I maintain my edge? How do I maintain my critical thinking? How do I use it for that? And it did shift. And so, again, we're I don't want to lose sight of why we're here and what we're talking about. But I do go back to the young kids.
Yeah.
And I will bring this together with EMF. And my point of starting down this road of kind of how I got here and where and why I'm here is really understanding human behavior, how to think about selling products. I worked with the Jazz I mentioned first. I didn't even make it past that part of the story. Worked with the Jazz. I tried to convince them to sell online. So the Utah Jazz have hundreds of retail stores that sell licensed apparel, right? All over, they might not know how they have now, but all over the country. And my vision was we should sell on the internet. You already have just mini distribution centers all over the country. Why can't we just sell online and come people pick up in store? This was 1998, 97 maybe. And
super innovative.
Very, because there was a last mile problem back then.
Right.
No, USPS was really the first one to really help eBay. eBay drove last mile back then, which was USPS, but that didn't come till a little bit later. And so I wasn't even thinking about using shipping stuff. I was just thinking like, we're already everywhere. Just come pick up in the store. And I couldn't convince them to do it. And then I got really into the data. And one thing about licensed sports apparel is you're kind of looking at the future. Like, so what I mean by that is we mentioned like John Stockton. If John Stockton's in a contract year, he may not be there the next season, but I'm buying John Stockton jerseys a year in advance. And so when a trade happens, all of a sudden I'm stuck with a bunch of Warren Sapp jerseys as he gets traded to the Raiders.
Right.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with all the Buccaneers jerseys that I have? And how can I immediately get some of the Raiders jerseys? So that becomes a problem. Or who's going to win? Because, fair weather fans want their merch. And so you're kind of predicting. And so I was really big on, well, we have all this data. We're getting all these signals from all over the country. We should be able to get ahead of our buying. So then I wanted to get into the buying world by using the data collection that we were getting. But of course, all the computers weren't connected. And I was like, just give me the spreadsheets and I'll do it. And I had all these crazy wild visions, and I just reached my limit of what I thought I could do there. And keep in mind, I'm like 19 years old. I'm not even like, I was doing really well there. So I had like the ear of the people that I needed, but they didn't see it. So that was fine. And I love them and, have maintained a lot of those relationships, which is crazy. Some of the best people I worked with, I met there, maybe because of the age that I was, I felt like they were superheroes to me. And, but I went from there to ancestry.com. And so ancestry.com, which at the time was myfamily.com, and myfamily.com was about connecting families through the internet, basically a social network for families. And just fell in love with that mission. And then ancestry.com was really the revenue engine of that business. And we basically had a call center that we'd market online, get people to sign up, and then we'd have to call them to get the credit card number to actually purchase, because nobody was really transacting online. And people were afraid to put their credit card information online. And I kind of always joke, and I don't know if I can even say this right now without somebody getting in trouble, maybe even me, but we'd have like sticky notes of credit cards, like blowing all around the office, just like that was more secure than like putting it online.
Dude, right? I used to be in the Army, and like the level of operational security, and again, I didn't ever have any like top secret clearance or anything like that, but nonetheless, like was working with like information in some respects that were, you
Yeah.
know, pretty sensitive information that
Yeah.
I saw wild things
Yeah.
that people did.
That's
And
my
like,
point.
There's always the assumption from the outside that it's super secure, and it's not at all.
Yeah. I'm like, sure, Betty, you're secure. You know,
Right.
stick it on the wall and it blows away. I don't know where it is.
Did we already
right?
charge that one?
Yeah,
Oh,
like, did we
shoot.
charge that one? Yeah, dude, it was wild. And it was a rocket ship, though.
Yeah.
Like, internet-based, you know, I think in the organization that I was in and eventually was, you know, part of this management team there, we went from like having like a couple 10, 20 people to hundreds, maybe 500, 700 people
Wow.
in that call center, just for the how quickly it grew.
Wow.
And so to be a part of that was really fun. And and again, we were young and we just dedicated we're figuring things out in real time. We're figuring the internet out. And that was a lot of fun. And so, you know, over the years, I continued to do that. I continued to find companies that I felt like I could really help from understanding your customer, understand their needs, understand their journey, meeting them, you know, where they need to be met with the information, how to bring them along. And I've been able to do that for 25 years, all with so many categories of whether that's, you know, B2B SaaS companies to food and beverage, wellness, tons of wellness stuff, a lot of fashion and apparel. And so I mentioned fashion and apparel because I was working with Reckitt Benckiser, which is a large CPG company that sells like Lysol and Mucinex and baby formula, Enfamil and all that. I think they sold that business off. But I worked with them during COVID because I was just like, what am I going to do? And no one knew what was going on. And so I had an opportunity to work with them, and specifically in the mom and baby category. And so we were looking at fertility products, lactation products, and again, thinking about how can I help, right? Like, how can I, and then that was a really interesting education. And to me, it doesn't matter what I'm selling. There's a formula. I got to figure out that formula. It's human behavior. It's problem solution. It's all of these things. And how do I deconstruct that and then rebuild it in a way that I can be effective and move this business forward? And I just, you know, I felt like Reckitt was positioned well at the time to just be helpful during a weird time in the world, right? And it was a short time there, but I enjoyed it. And the women that started that company, I really was excited to be able to work with them. So because they had a really strong mission, like they were very mission driven, very, very vision. And I felt like I could help them. And so then jump forward, I get a call from Drew Green, who's the chairman of Aries. He's also the CEO of Indochino, which is a massively successful menswear company. And they make kind of like a custom suit that, you know, really kind of cuts out the middleman. So that's a whole tailored suit system. And I think they have a women's line now too. And anyways, it's a very innovative company. And so he calls me, and I think most likely because of our connections with the fashion apparel world, and they'd pitched me on this company with kind of it was a celebrity company that was a toothbrush. And I was just like, I don't know if we need another toothbrush, right? Like, how is this? Yeah. How is this? And I'm like emotional about it too when they're asking me, and I'm like, because it's like I said, it's during this COVID period of time where it's like, and I feel like I have this ability to sell things, I have this ability to market things, and I'm like, I don't need to do that. I really enjoy what I'm doing with like fertility and lactation. There's a real problem here, and it's getting worse, and so I'm like, how can I contribute there? So I kind of, like I said, I'm emotional on this call. Like, it's not even this person's fault. And I'm like, who needs another toothbrush? Turns out, I think it's like Philips and Oral-B's patent had expired. And that's why you see all of these motorized toothbrushes on the market right now, because
that makes sense.
Everyone's now in market because they can.
Yep.
So they call me back and they're like, hey, we've got this, I'm going to throw a flyer. We got this weird company that neutralizes EMF. And they're like, we get it if you want to hang up on us based upon how you behaved last time we called you. And I'm like, no, keep talking. And now, like every good husband, they should give their wife a lot of credit, which I'm about to do. I always just call her a hippie. Like, she's an absolute hippie and beautiful. She's, you know, we've got 4 kids that I give her all the credit in the world. They're good kids, healthy, strong. We have 0 medical history. My kids have never been to the doctor. So there's like zero medical history on really me or my kids at this point. And it's because of her, right? She can do anything.
She's been the OG crunchy mom for a while.
She is the crunchy. Yes.
Yeah,
Since I met her, like, and she grew up in a household that, you know, they would not only grow their own food, but they would process it to the point of like, they could store it, they could use it. And so my biggest investment was a wheat grinder and a Vitamix when we got married. Like, I contributed like a sick like DVD player with surround sound, and she brought the wheat grinder and the Vitamix and a juice, like an Omega juicer, right? And
Vitamixes last a long time, though, so they're
for
nice.
Sure. But the juicer is like an auger juicer because you couldn't have the centrifugal one because it actually destroyed the and I'm like, whatever. I'm like, this is like a $600 juicer. We got like $600 blender. Yeah. The wheat grinder might be like thousands. And so that's how we roll. I mean, we would buy 50-pound bags of wheat from Italy, and Incredible. She'd be grinding it, baking bread. She's got sourdough starter that's like a child that needs to be attended to. and so EMF was not a far reach for me. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
She has always been concerned. She was very early on recognizing the negative effects of social media and how it affected mood, how it affected attention, how it affected, and not in our kids, like in adults, and just observing how it drew people away from the things that matter, such as raising children and paying attention. It was just a really, so her just intuition was unbelievable. And I trusted her because I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this. And then I trust you to go do this. But at the same time, we have evidence that what you're doing is actually working because we're all really healthy and doing it really well. So, and she's always like, as long as you go do whatever you want to go do, as long as I have these things, I can grow my plants. I can, we have food and shelter. You can do whatever you want. Literally for probably 25 years or 20 years, she probably had no idea what I was working on half the time. That's how much she just trusted me. Yeah. And I just trusted her to go do that. So the EMF conversation was not new, but I was extremely skeptical because the number of, crystals and rocks and minerals that had come through my house, and, Wi-Fi and no Wi-Fi and wireless phones. And she was just raised in an environment where you started from a place of skepticism.
Yeah.
And not of instant trust and acceptance. And I was always like the innovator. I'm like, no, the automobile is going to transform the world. We will figure out the emissions and exhaust later, right?
Yeah.
Some people will probably die through car crashes, but that's the cost of innovation. Yeah. That was my mind, right? Yeah. And she's more of like, people will die, therefore we shouldn't have the car. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like complete opposite. And we made it work. So then I have the call with them and they tell me about EMF and I'm like, okay, I'm intrigued. I'll have another call. So I have the call with the founder, Dimitri.
He's the inventor too, right?
No, his father's the inventor.
Okay,
and we can talk about the history of Aries a bit, but Aries actually was a research foundation initially.
Oh, interesting.
So it's over 30 years old.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it started as a research foundation, and we'll talk about, because everyone's like, oh, 5G didn't exist. Well, it wasn't about 5G. It was about understanding the body. One thing that's really misunderstood, and I would really, this is where I feel like a lot of people are misinformed and not educated, is how much the body is electric. And actually,
I talk about that a lot on the show.
And the idea that EMF were just fine as electrical beings that are highly conductive in a very charged world, and how we just coexist and that's just fine. It isn't that big of a leap when people actually understand the physiology of all of that. And so Aries started with really understanding the physiological side of electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation, and understanding balance and imbalance of electricity in electric fields, not as in protecting against external man-made EMF. That wasn't the original vision of it.
Probably wasn't as much of a concern.
It wasn't much of a concern
either.
The funding, though, some years later, did come from solving that problem.
Got it.
And we can talk about that.
Cool.
So So like I said, I got on the phone with Dimitri. Dimitri, working with his father, commercialized the product, meaning they had these prototypes and they had these solutions for really military and like commercial, like big commercial implementations and things like that, not for personal use. And so Dimitri, with the help of his father, they took it to productize it essentially. And that's so I got on the phone with Dimitri. He walks me through it. We go through a lot of the research. And luckily I would say my mind, as much as I think I'm creative, I'm more of like someone that admires creative people and tries to emulate and learn from them. But I am more of a data and like analytical, scientific mind. That's where I would say I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
I'm not someone that gets it right away, but my curiosity and interest to understand it really drives me. And I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get it. He could feed me all those studies and I would just gobble it up. And then, after pressing him and getting on the phone with as many people as I could to really understand it, I was like, I'm really excited about this. I really think that I've found a home where I can take years of selling whatever it is. I don't even care what it is. You want to sell ferns? I can sell ferns. Like, it just doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a formula. There's a group of people that want your ferns, and I will find them and will understand what it is about that fern that matches what it is that they need or want. And sometimes they don't know, and that's part of the process, is to help them understand, clarify what it is that they want, and then you then match that, right? Like, I can do that with anything. And so I was like, finally, I can make a home here where it's like, I will convince people to buy this because it's better. This is and everybody needs it. And if you don't need it, let me tell you why you need it. And I felt really good about that because I don't believe everyone needs your fern, right? And now maybe I picked on the plants, and I shouldn't pick on the plants. Everyone needs plants. But you get my point. I felt like I could do that. And I was like,
basically
I found
what
a
you're getting
home
at
here.
is if you're living in modernity at this point, you need these.
You need it. You absolutely do. There's no ability to opt out anymore. Like, it's so ubiquitous. I don't even know that you can go into the forest anymore without bumping into some man-made electronic signal.
Or at the very least, you're talking about lighting the sky with millimeter wave technology.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Like, we have satellites everywhere. You go out into let's call any desert you want, Joshua Tree, Zion, wherever you want to go, and you're seeing now are satellites, and just they're not stars, they're satellites, and you can see it. And so my point is, like, you're just getting to that point where it's like now. Look, those signals are weak. Am I super worried about them? Not really. No. But my point is, when you're sensitive, and a large percentage of our audience would identify as like hypersensitive, you feel it, you know it, and you know that, yes, I'm in the desert, but there's also a geostorm happening right now. You'll know that too. That's just the earth acting funny, and you'll know that. Yeah. And so, someone that's hypersensitive, they know. And so the average person, no, I get it. You may not respond. That's fine. But we're just getting that world where it's just getting harder and harder to get away from it. And I would say 9% of the US and North America and the modern world, you're saturated in it nonstop.
Yeah.
And so I felt really good about, we have a technology, and if I make someone buy it that maybe wouldn't have otherwise bought it, I actually feel okay about that. Whereas, when I was in the fashion world, and I didn't really think that everyone needed a $300 pair of jeans, let alone 6 of them. Right. So although I love a good pair of jeans, like everybody, am I really moving humanity forward? Not really.
Right.
So that's where I was like, I felt really good about my ability to come here, and where we are now, I couldn't be more stoked on. And the growth, how we found our way to the different corners of human performance with the UFC and the Timberwolves and athletes, and where I see where we're going, I'm just super excited. And I feel really privileged to do it. And I also share with people, there's 150, maybe 200 people that have contributed to the work of Aries. It isn't
Wow.
just like one inventor that just came up with this. There's hundreds of people. And so I feel a real burden. I feel that burden of carrying the work forward, that when I get attacked online or people want to attack the science, I take it personally, not because I can't handle it, because they just don't know. They're uninformed and they haven't taken the time. They start from a place of my wife, of skepticism, and just say, this can't be possible, or I've seen this before, or none of this stuff works. And that's just simply not true.
Mm.
And these people have, in a lot of ways, have dedicated their lives to this work. And I just take it really seriously. Like, it's a real privilege for me to be in this seat and do this.
I think as the wellness industry continues to really rapidly explode, so many people are offering various so-called biohacking technologies that are making a variety of wild claims. And with that comes a lot, kind of like your wife, of skepticism surrounding those, especially,
Yeah.
her, it sounds like she's very similar to me in that she tries to be a nature maximalist, if you will,
100%, yeah.
and be very skeptical of any technologies. Not to say that we shouldn't use them, especially when we're in modernity and we can't, live out amongst nature in strictly natural building materials with a low EMF environment. Having some of these tools can be incredibly helpful. Now, the question is, how helpful are those tools actually? When it comes to EMF mitigation, I am admittedly very skeptical of a variety of the products around that are out there. And I will say, before I dove in, and I was one of those people who just didn't know better, before I dove into Aries Tech and started really looking into it, I was one of the people who was like, what is this little sticker on the back of my phone actually going to do? Especially because there are other companies who have stickers. I'm like, there's no way that thing's doing anything.
Yeah.
But then when I dove into your research and I've listened to you on a variety of podcasts and then some other people from Aries, like, oh my gosh, okay, there actually is something to this technology. So I just wanted to set that context there.
Yeah. I think we can maybe jump to the technology real quick.
But before we get there, though, I did want to sort of set the stage as well, because I think a lot of people just zoom past this piece. What is non-native EMFs?
Yeah.
What are they?
Good question. And kind of going back to the physiology of the body, your heart, your brain, your cells, your nervous system are all operating on energy. They're all operating on electromagnetic fields, and electronic pulses are being created. Electricity is being created in your heart that can be measured from 10 feet away, and it's like real energy, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is electricity, and I think the average person doesn't understand that because you can't see it. And what I love about the work that we do, especially because we do so many live demos of measuring the heart, measuring the brain, and we show you what's happening at just your baseline. We show you how your body responds in the presence of man-made EMF, and then we show you the results, what it looks like with Aries as well. And you actually see a new baseline be established. And then that leads to a bunch of questions. And that's really what you're asking. And the truth of the matter is, your body is communicating and functioning from electricity. Yeah. And look, electricity may or may not be the right word, but the idea being an energy.
Charge.
A charge. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Gerald Pollack's work with fourth phase water?
A little bit. I get a lot of water related.
It lends credence to what you're talking about. And just a brief summary for those who've not heard of his work that are coming across this podcast. Dr. Gerald Pollack has basically shown that the body has a phase of water that it is comprised of that is not liquid, solid, or gas. It's almost in a gel-like state. And water is typically neutral, but when water is exposed to hydrophilic surfaces, like, say, a cell membrane, our body's comprised of a variety of hydrophilic surfaces. Water will form this zone of exclusion. It's called exclusion zone water, where the inner part of the water has this high negative charge, and it pushes anything, any impurities, toxins, solutes, and anything that's positively charged to the perimeter, thus creating a water battery inside of our bodies. So our bodies literally run off of things that help increase the negative charge or expand the exclusion zone. So electricity plays a vital role in our health, even cellularly, to the point that we're now questioning whether ATP is even worth discussing.
Yeah.
It's more about how much negative charge are we receiving.
Yeah. And again, I always kind of like try to stay in my lane of like things that I know really well. I'm familiar with what you're describing, what you're talking about, because this stuff comes up quite a bit in my world. And I'm just not an expert. And so I tend to stay in my lane, but I always kind of point back to like, what are the things that are in our world that we just don't even question? Electrolytes, for example. It's in the name, and brands market on it with little lightning bolts and little plus and minus charges on their logos and things like that. Well, what is that? And that's minerals, which are conductive. And the more minerals you put into your system, the more conductive and the better your body's going to perform, because that the energy can actually move through your body better and do its job better. So I kind of always point to people to say, you accept that without, when did we start accepting electrolytes in our world without like, and I'm not saying they're bad, I'm saying they're good,
Right.
but all of a sudden everyone's just like, oh, I get it. But you don't understand the EMF stuff. And that's the part where like it isn't that big of a jump from saying, I understand that. And so kind of getting back to the point of like, your body's communicating, it's operating on a just automated level of producing energy and communicating through these signals and kind of moving information and processing information, sending and receiving information. And that's how your body works. And so but it's at from a frequency standpoint, it's at a low level, smooth, curved frequency, a lot like the earth. And so when we talk about grounding, we talk about those things, those are why, there's science that suggests that's really helpful. You're able to discharge built up energy through the ground because it's your ground, you're releasing it to the ground the same way a plug would in the wall. And you're tuning yourself essentially to the earth's, Schumann resonance, the earth's heartbeat. And so then when you look at the digital waves, they're pulsed, they're square, or resemble square, and they are completely foreign in size. When you understand, you mentioned millimeter wave, maybe we were on shooting or we're not shooting, but millimeter wave just essentially stands for the millimeters. They're small. Yeah. And when you think of, let's say, AM radio waves or the Earth's waves, they're gigantic. They're huge. And they're just different. And so the way that some of the biologists on our team describe it is, as your body's developing and your brain and your heart are sending this, electromagnetic radiation through your body and communicating, it starts to develop a language, and it understands its language, and the language evolves as you grow and as you develop, and that language is evolving. And what happens is when you get out into the world and you're exposed to the man-made EMF, you're getting pinged with high energy, foreign frequencies that never look the same. And so they describe it as, imagine standing in a football stadium in the middle, and every seat is filled with someone that speaks a different language, and they're all yelling at you. It's chaos. You will never, ever evolve to understand how to interpret any of that. And so you just have to deal with it. You have to try to figure it out as all of this information is coming at you that you're never able to adapt to, because it's always different, and it's loud, and it's noise essentially. And I think that's such a good metaphor, because you can see it and you can see how stressful that might be. And no matter how long you're going to be there, you're never going to be able to adapt. Our body could never adapt to that much inbound, high energy, foreign information constantly coming at it. And that's essentially what happens, because every environment you go into looks different than the last one. And as you sit here, and as we're surrounded by things right now, it's constantly changing as we're sitting in it. That information that's coming at you in the form, and it's changing constantly. And so your body's never able to adapt to it. So it shows up as stress. It shows up as physiological stress. Your nervous system reacts, and everyone's different, right? Everyone reacts negatively, but how they react will be different. Yeah. And so maybe that's a good spot to stop and say, okay, does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. That's perfect. Yeah. And what you're talking about, where everyone will react negatively, some it will show up in like psychological issues, some it will show up in literal physical issues, or a unique combination of both pertaining to the individual.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say we've tested, I don't know how many people, let's say 100 plus now, EEG, heart rate variability, in a varying intensities of that, controlled, double blind, all those. The setup hasn't really ever mattered, by the way. And meaning like it can be blind, double blind. It hasn't really mattered. The results are always the same. And I think that's just because what you're measuring is difficult for people to understand how to even control.
Mhm.
Like without some expert, person that understands meditation real well and wants to rig it and say, okay, I'm going to go into a meditative state while I'm doing this third test. It's really hard to manipulate.
Mhm.
But it hasn't really mattered. Everybody has shown a negative response. And what I mean by that is in the brain, you'll see aspects of the brain where it shows up as stress. You'll see parts of the brain shut down, and which in one of our pro basketball players that we had tested, I can't remember if this is up on the site right now, but you can go see it if it is. It's the only basketball player that I think it's on there. He almost falls asleep.
Wow.
And what's interesting is you see the part of the brain and the heart basically slow down to that type of state. And then 2-3 minutes later, you see him physically get drowsy from exposure to the phone.
Wow.
And he has no idea. And then, we continue to do our different tests with him. And then you see him come back out of it. It's wild, dude. How that showed up in this pro basketball, young kid, pro basketball player, elite, like all-star and Olympic, and he falls asleep.
You know what's so wild about that to me, though, just like zooming out a little bit, is that you are showing the harmful effects of non-native EMFs on human beings. But when these telecommunication technologies are tested by government agencies, they're using SAM, which stands for Standard Anthropomorphic Mannequin. And what they're doing essentially when they're testing these various telecommunication technologies is they'll fill Sam's head with this liquid. It's a mannequin, right? They fill its head with liquid. They hold the phone a certain distance away from the head, not directly on the head,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then they only do a phone call for, I think, roughly 6 minutes. And if the liquid in the head doesn't heat up past a certain degree, they then deem that the technology is safe for human use. And you brought up before we started recording that they're, even within that clearly absurd way to test whether this is safe, they're operating on the wrong foundational premise to begin with. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah, it isn't really, you're talking about the thermogenic response of radiation exposure, which is like a microwave, right? Yeah. And you're talking about, ionizing radiation versus non-ionizing radiation and, cellular damage, because like those are, and that's what you'll see when you get on the internet, and all the internet scientists out there will point to like, oh, the cell phone is in the safe spot of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's because you're looking specifically at the thermogenic response. You're not looking at the cellular level, or you're not looking at anything that we've already talked about, which is how the conflicting energy forces, and how the inability to process the data that's being transmitted, not necessarily data from your phone, but like the energy is received as data. And it's like, your body's trying to say, what do you want me to do with this? I don't know what to do with this. And I'm trying to adapt, I'm trying to learn, which then shows up as stress. And they don't test that. And so the reason why science is split, and I wouldn't even say it's split, there is overwhelming evidence that EMF exposure of any level has a negative effect on the body. What is maybe debated is, well, what does that mean over time? What are the long-term effects? And one of the jokes I always make when I get interviewed is, someone that comes from a marketing background, I think that EMF suffered from a PR problem. And the same way that, any other disruptive environmental product or chemical or whatever's been in our world, it's why is DuPont looked at as a good company versus Monsanto, who wasn't? It's a PR problem.
Right.
DuPont is guilty maybe more of a lot.
Environmental pollutants.
Environmental,
Yeah,
like a lot, dude.
yeah,
a lot. I mean, they invented a lot of things that have killed a
Right.
lot of people, right?
Right.
And it's a PR problem. And so I look at EMF and I say, well, what happened? When you go back, the moment that you go to cancer and you start saying this, whatever this is, causes cancer, the moment that you picked a fight, you're never going to win.
Mhm.
And it's when you look at what culture thinks, they think that EMF is okay because it's never been proven to cause cancer. Right? And so all the media, all of the stuff point to that fact. What they don't look at is what is just chronic exposure to foreign electromagnetic frequency or electromagnetic fields do to your body right now in this moment. What is happening physiologically in your system? That's never really looked at. And so now you have a bunch of independent research that's out there. I think the World Health Organization says they have over 35,000 now studies that have been submitted.
That surprises me that the World Health Organization has admitted that as well.
Well, they already labeled it a class B carcinogen. Or whatever it is. Yeah, it's already been labeled as a carcinogen. So they did that much.
Yeah.
But that's in a group of other carcinogens that are like, oh, okay, I kind of get that, but at the same time, it's not really being. Now there was a really big case that a lot of people don't know about from RFK Jr.'s team in 2021. I think it was. You can look this up. It was in a DC court, federal court, and the Children's Health Defense, I believe, alongside of Environmental Health Trust, I think brought this case. And what they were really pushing for is to update the regulations that you're talking about.
I wonder if they worked with We Are Not Sam, the organization.
Maybe. Yeah. You can look this one up, and it's on our website too.
Cool.
But it basically, the ruling was the FCC and the FTC, and I think the FDA was involved in that one too, of ignoring the evidence and saying they need to go back and evaluate. And of course, nothing's happened since then, but it was a pretty substantial win to say, for the judge to be like, yeah, there's clearly something here. There's clearly evidence. And when you read through that, there's some interesting pieces where it's like the FCC would call the FDA to say, hey, will you sign off on this? The FDA, and they basically the judge like, you can't use your buddies to be like,
right,
to say this is okay, this is not. So really interesting. Again, nothing happened, nothing movement. Hopefully with RFK, and the work that they're doing now and with the administration, maybe we'll see some movement. And he did put it on that executive order. I want to say in section 4, it explicitly called out EMF and its relationship to chronic disease in children.
That's amazing.
And so that was, again, hopefully that work continues and we can get more resolution there. I know we bounced around, quite a bit. So I want to make sure I get to anything that I didn't answer.
This is so helpful, man. And I think that the reality that this tech, like non-native EMFs in that category, are ubiquitous in our environment at this point. And ironically, the way the world is heading, and again, if you're listening to or watching this podcast, like you're guilty of what I'm about to say as well, we're all continuing to use them. It's like, how do we approach using them in a way that is less impactful to our biology? And the other piece that I'll add to this, just as a quick aside, and we don't need to go off on a tangent on this, I actually think that a lot of the problems that are attributed to, let's say, some other areas of health are actually, in my mind, the function of non-native EMFs being problematic. And I'm not saying that some of these other things are not problematic as well. And I'm being very vague here because I don't want to go off on a huge tangent, but I think that the non-native EMF category is so much more impactful on our health than we're willing to look at or even think about on a day-to-day basis. And it's ultimately because it's something that is producing or in the realm of metaphysics, really. You know what I mean? It's outside the available electromagnetic spectrum that we can perceive as human beings. So we just don't think to look there for something that is causing harm to our biology. And that's without even getting into the effects of social media and like the repetitive looking at your phone thing that we're talking about. But
I have a comment on that because, well, you mentioned a couple things like the metaphysics. What does trouble me sometimes is actually how easy it is to show that your body doesn't like it, right? Like that bothers me a little bit. Like, why is it that I can show up in any room, anywhere, with the neuroscientist, with the EEG, with the heart rate, and we can just show you.
Yeah.
You at an individual level, you're healthy. You don't probably, I don't know that, your health conditions, but my assumption is you're a healthy functioning dude with probably not a lot of major glaring issues. You will have a negative response.
Yeah.
I work with some of the best athletes on the planet, and there's not been one. As a matter of fact, they are way more sensitive than the average, probably moderately healthy dad, that works out 3 times a week and has nice biceps, right? And it's because they're so tuned. Their bodies are so, like, they understand the inputs. And so people often ask us, why do you guys do this work why athletes? Why athletes? Well, first of all, they came to us. Every one of the athletes that you see that we work with, that was inbound. That wasn't us going saying, hey, I want to go to these partnerships because it's cool. And it was, they wanted to understand what was happening.
Incredible.
They want to understand, why do I feel this negative effect? A lot of it's intuition, though, too, I would say. Shockingly, women, moms, there's not a single person when you have the EMF conversation, specifically with women that have children, that don't automatically say, I've wondered about that, or those AirPods or that watch, I just don't think it's a good idea to have on you all day. Like, there's an intuition from moms that is unreal.
Yeah.
It's rare that I come across one. I'm not even sure that I have. I'm just saying, so I'm a scientist. I'm trying to be a scientist. Nothing's absolute when you're a scientist. To say that they're not all like that, but it's just wild, dude. I'll sit on the airplane. People ask me, what do I do? And what is that? And I tell them, and every time it's a mom, she's like, I've figured that would be the case. Like, it's so interesting, right?
That is super interesting.
But I wanted to comment on the fact that we talk a lot about man-made EMF, and I want to go back to the origins of Aries. Aries was never built as a company and as a research foundation as with the intent to protect against man-made EMF. And the story is, could you tune your body to create an ideal state of physiology, biology, so that your body could actually do its job better? And I think where you see Aries going is not about fear-mongering or saying the world that you live in is saturated in EMF and it's poisoning you. I don't like that. Like, I struggle a lot with that. You may even see some of our ads where it's like, man, they could really go hard on this, but they don't. Or some of them we might feel like that maybe we do. But the honest truth that it is scary, right? I don't like that story, though.
But here's a big piece of that too, is to add to what you're saying, is that when you look at the placebo, nocebo effects, psychosomatics, and like how one's own belief about something when focused perpetually can lead to real health consequences for better and for worse. Yeah. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird, you want to be aware, but you don't want to be so fearful of something.
You could be, and again, if I was to put, we have a few people in the room right now. If we tested every one of them, there's no way they're walking out of here without being scared. Mm-hmm. There's just no way. And I don't want that to be the message. Yeah. Because it's crippling. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things to be afraid of. Whether that's the glues in your floors, or that's in your countertop, or your rug, or like, there's so many things to be stressed out about. Right now, everyone's stressed about polyester clothing, like, like, what do we do? Like, our world. And the truth is, as we were talking off air, is like, your body is pretty awesome. Your body can deal with a lot. Our job is to control what we can control and get out of its way and support it however we can and let it do its job. And so going back to the original vision for Aries was really about, how do we do that from a energy level and a tuning level? Like, if you can tune your body, what happens? Now jump forward to the work that we're doing now. We work with a couple of neuroscientists who work with athletes, and that's actually what they do. They actually can stimulate the brain, stimulate the heart with specific frequencies to actually tune the body to perform better. And everyone, more people are familiar with PEMF mats. A lot of people don't know that EMF has been used in the medical world since the 70s. FDA cleared devices that help bone healing, wound healing, treat depression, anxiety, PTSD. These have been around for a long time. This is not new information. It's just not widely available or talked about. I'm not entirely sure why, but that was the mission. It was like, how could we create a solution for everybody to live in an environment that's more supportive of biological function?
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened was, as a secondary effect, the way that Aries works is by creating a stable field, by interacting with the EMF that's present, whether that's the man-made EMF or the energy from your body or the earth. It's sensitive enough that it can create that field. The more energy that's in the environment, the bigger and more intense that field is, the more stable that field is. But what happened was, it also prevented the man-made EMF from affecting the body. Wow. So that was a secondary effect. That wasn't the primary effect that we were chasing, that we were working on. So that was Dimitri saying, hey, if we commercialize this, what's the problem we're solving? The problem we're solving is 5G is, people are tripping out about it, and rightly so. And we have an effective solution for that. And that was a bit of an argument with the team, the research team, the inventor, and Dimitri, because that wasn't the vision. That wasn't the mission.
Wow.
And so over time, as the World Health Organization did their classification of EMF as a carcinogen, to then 5G coming out, and then the chaos that ensued all over the world about 5G, and still does. You go to Australia, UK, Italy, Cyprus, the country. There's some countries out there that are just very much against the technology, and it's a different conversation than it is in the US. Mm-hmm. But that, I think that's really important. So I kind of compare it to water. Like, you don't usually go into someone's house and they tell you how bad their water was, and now it's better. When they come in and say, hey, taste my water, taste how good it is, it's clean, it's clear, whatever, they're not talking about the dark side of that. Mm-hmm. And what we're talking about is essentially cleaning your electromagnetic environment to be more supportive of health, the same way that you clean your water and you brag about how good your water tastes and how supportive it is of health and wellness. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and to me, that's the bigger vision. Aries will become the infrastructure of the modern world. Like, there will be a day, and not that far off, because you're seeing already with the Timberwolves and our Aries certified spaces stuff, where it's just built into our environment, and you're not even thinking about it anymore. And
when you say built in, just for those who are listening and watching, what he's talking about is, correct me if I'm wrong in this, the Minnesota Timberwolves stadium is literally decked out in Aries Tech.
Yeah. And it's what's interesting is when you go to some of these sports stadiums, they're not shy about their 5G technology. As a matter of fact, the reason why you see a lot of telecommunications sponsor arenas is because it's cheaper for them to sponsor the team and install their hardware at that point in the city than it would be for them to go lease the real estate and install it. And it is a base station of 5G. And so you go into these stadiums and you just look up, they're not shy about it. They're little 5G millimeter wave base stations throughout every concourse, everywhere around you. And then it's compounded by the fact that you're in these cement walls and corridors where EMF can't escape, and it's just really amplified. And then now you have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people with cell phones. And you've got a tiny microwave, right?
I would love to see you all test someone while they're in that environment during a basketball game.
Yeah,
I can't even.
I'm working on that. I
can't even imagine, man.
Yeah, but the reason why I go back to, if you look at some of our announcements around the Timberwolves or even our FAQs we prepared for the fans there, it isn't about the protective side of it. It isn't really. That's not the story. It's really about creating healthy environments. Mm-hmm. And again, I see a world where, a good example, I was just in Vegas for the UFC International Fight Week, and I stayed at a hotel, and you could rent room A, which is your basic room, or I could rent room B, which had an air filtration system, a different mattress. I can't remember some other things, right? That were more like a wellness thing. And it was like $50 more per night. And I'm like, that's super interesting. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Right. It might even not have been 50, it might have been 10. I don't remember. Yeah. It was not enough to make me think that I should have that and not the basic room. Right. So I go in there and I'm like, their message wasn't The other room was bad. This room is good. It was, how do I level up the environment so I can get maybe better sleep or whatever? Like, it was really interesting. And so that's how I think about Aries in the future is, first of all, it should have been in that room.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to do a deal with that company because it's just more supportive.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say, then I'll throw it back to you because I go on these stories.
I love it.
But
it's great.
A lot of it's the framing, right? Like it's helpful, I think, for the framing of the conversation to ground it in like where we are today and things that people understand to, hey, this isn't really that big of a crazy jump. This isn't really woo-woo. This is actually like physics that's well understood. Mm-hmm. This isn't, I don't want to pick on crystals and things like that, but like there's a reason why science doesn't even like try to say crystals are good, bad, or whatever, or the mineral-based solutions that quote unquote absorb EMF. There's a reason why, like, it's just not, it doesn't start from a place of physics that makes sense. You have to go into this. Anytime you see the word quantum, it's a way for people to not explain things. And we are extremely transparent. You can look at our studies, our math, the angles of the geometry of our product are online. Like you can see it.
Yeah.
And we've won awards for that math. And that stuff's been peer reviewed. That math, we've been presented it in multiple, congresses for international technologies. Like it's the math is really, really a big part of what we do. And the reason why I mentioned math is because they're mathematical proofs. These are the black and white aspects of science. Mm-hmm. And so we're grounded in that's where we come from, is a bunch of scientists and people that dedicated their life to figuring this out. And so I get really like, hey, let me help you understand, like, here's where we are. It isn't that crazy to think that EMFs are disrupting how your body functions. And then also let me tell you how it works and how we can create a stable environment and what happens when you build from the ground up. And an EMF strategy becomes part of, to me, it's a core pillar of health. Mm-hmm. And it's just not as talked about as much, but I believe it should be on that level.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Thought it was really funny what you said about quantum there too, because I've said the exact same. Literally,
it drives me nuts. It's like a way to not explain yourself. Whether totally it's quantum physics, quantum science, quantum whatever, aspects of quantum world are understood. But the moment that you say that, you basically say, I don't know.
Right.
The answer.
Right. Yeah, totally agree with you. Hey y'all, I'm here with Melissa Kupsch from Remedy Academy of Homeopathy. We are so stoked here at the Way Forward to be partnering with Melissa and Remedy in order to spread the message of homeopathy across the world, and also to partner on the eventual development of healing centers across the United States.
People are pretty quickly coming to realize that frequency is the future of medicine. We are witnessing the great resurgence of homeopathy right now. We're really moving away from that suppressive medical model. Whether it's for eczema, asthma, hormones, fertility, anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever it is, it all starts as energy in the person's field first. If we change our field, we can completely change our life. Our 2-year academy is open worldwide to anyone who wants to become a homeopath. We've got 5 lecturers and we currently have over 500 students enrolled, which is record numbers in our field. A career in homeopathy is amazing for anyone who wants flexibility in their work and who wants to be valuable in creating this new world. We have stay-at-home parents enrolled. We have ex-medical professionals, grandparents signed up who want to learn how to heal their grandchildren and pass on that invaluable knowledge. We even have husband and wife teams. So my husband enrolled in the course with no prior knowledge of health as a background, and he is loving it.
Kylie is also enrolled as well. So my partner is, and she's so stoked to become a homeopath and to be helping to spread this message across the world.
The thing that we hear from so many of our students is, I found my thing. Homeopathy is the key. We harness frequencies from nature and we alter the field of all creations. So if anybody wants to join us or they want to know more about it, they can visit our website.
Yeah, and all that information will be in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about Remedy Academy, also RMDY Collective, also some of the homeopathic products that they have, please just head to the show notes. All of that will be listed there. There's a recent poll that I put out on all my social media channels, and 95% of people responded that they're struggling to find their health and freedom community in person. And don't get me wrong, these platforms, these devices that you're listening to or watching this podcast on right now are great for helping to disseminate information, helping us, find like-minded people to validate us, but they are not a replacement for real in-person community. At the core of our new community platform is a powerful, easy-to-use map helping you to instantly connect with like-hearted, like-minded community, including men and women, farms, schools, practitioners of all types, and other businesses near you. The platform also includes groups, social functions, messaging, and Platinum members also get access to our content library with footage from all of our in-person and virtual events like Confluence and the end of COVID, as well as breathwork sessions, Qigong sessions, member Q&As, and also member community calls. So if you'd like to support this podcast and support our mission of helping people to connect hyper-locally in person, and also obviously support yourself in the process, go to the show notes or just go to thewayforward.com/join. And again, the way forward is spelled thewayforward.com/join to become a member today. Help us build the way forward for mankind. Okay, so how do you explain to me like I'm 5, how Aries Tech works?
Yeah. Look, EMF is hard because it's invisible. And we work really hard to make it visible. And that's why we do a lot of the brain scans and the heart rate variability stuff. But still, it's not enough. Like everybody, would need to be scanned essentially to be able to see their own results to really get that proof point. And we're doing some exciting things where I don't want to say we're going to scan everyone in the world, but like we're going to try to make it more accessible. I'm working with some clinics and things like that to be able to bring it to more people, because I think the more informed people are, the more trust that they have in what we're doing and what we're saying, the better. And I'll tangent here for a minute because I think it's really important. You've touched on this a few times. How many wellness products are in this world right now? How many things could you be doing? If you were to wake up right now and do all the things, it's all you would do, right? And I can't emphasize enough that if you could only choose a handful of things, let's take sleep out of it. We'll put sleep back into it, but we'll take sleep out. We'll take nutrition out. We'll take movement out. We'll take sunlight out. Then what? You take your basics out. Now what are you doing, right? There's still infinite numbers. When you look at the data, your own data, like I said, we haven't tested you, but I hope that we will, so that you can start telling our story for us, is you will see that you are operating every day, all day long, at a certain percentage below 100%, because your nervous system is constantly trying to deal with the EMF that's around you. Constant. So nobody is operating 100%, and we have the data to show that. And I can show every person that they're operating at some level below 100%. And I can then show you, I can get you above 100% in most cases with Aries. And so that means your brain's functioning better. That means your heart's functioning better. That means your cellular communication is better. That means you're actually getting out of the way of your body to let it do its job better. That's a really powerful story. So when I show that to people and I can prove that to people, anybody, it hasn't mattered whether they're someone that's really ill, because what I find really interesting is we are winning. I would say we're winning in the edges, elite athletes and really sick people. That's like our core audience.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like elites, right? At both edges. And both of them experience transformational benefits and measurable, and we'll measure them, right? The people in the middle are the ones that need it most because they're least aware of what it's doing to them. But what it's essentially doing is it's just eroding slowly over time your system. And so we mentioned social media. One argument that I have with some of I would just say it's a debate, it's not really an argument, with some of the neuroscientists that we work with, is what came first, the psychological effects of social media or the physiological effects of the cell phone? Because almost the 2 or 3 things that are consistent in most people that we've tested: mood regulation, your ability to regulate mood, and the ability to regulate emotion, parasympathetic and sympathetic activation. So fight or flight is pegged in most people. That's where you see it in the heart rate variability stuff. And some level of ability to focus. Almost everybody has some varying degree of that. In some, it's extreme. In healthy people that you would never expect, it's extreme. And some, it's not. The mood regulation and emotional regulation, though, is almost always in an extreme level in everybody. Mm-hmm. So when you're sitting on your phone and you're watching social media for all the psychological effects, but then your system isn't able to process that information in any healthy way because your physiology isn't processing it in the best possible state, well, you're compounding the psychological effect of it, right? Yeah. And then you create this loop of death, essentially, and now you're upset, you're depressed, and you can't figure out why, right? And what I find fascinating is there's a lot of people that do like the phone detoxes, social media detoxes. Again, what is it? Is it the fact that you're doing a better job of managing your exposure, or the psychology, or both? I think it's both, and that's where our debate always is. Yeah. But your defense systems are off or eroded when the phone is near, or when you're exposed to EMF. So my point where I was going with that is, when you look at that at an individual level, you look at what's happening at your body or within your body, almost in every system that we can measure in real time. I don't know why it's an argument about what you would choose to spend money on, spend time on as a way to live longer, live healthier, because it's overwhelming. Like the stress that's on your system from man-made EMF, or even just potentially from your body being not tuned properly, is pretty crazy. And there's a lot of different ways to describe that. So you asked me, how does it work? Anyway, I'll stop there because I wanted to just, if you had a comment on that. Because
that's helpful. That's super helpful context.
This is why I'm so passionate about, like, when you look at the core pillars of health, red light therapy, not a core pillar.
No.
Is it helpful? Yes. Blue light glasses, which by the way is EMF. Helpful? Sure. How do I know if they're working? How do I know if the $5 pair on Amazon that I just bought versus the $500 pair from the whatever brand, what's the difference? Right? Like, how is it working? Why is it working? Why did we all of a sudden just decide that we accept that as, hey, that's stimulating your nervous system in a negative way, messing your circadian rhythm, but all the other EMF around you is not.
Right.
Is that like,
it's really
why
good point.
that?
It's a really good point.
And why did blue light get a good PR agent? Right? Like, why did that get a good marketing strategy and general EMF did not?
That's a really good point. That's such a really good point, because a lot of people are hyper focused on that. Not that is not harmful.
Yeah, right. That's not the point. Yeah. Right. It's misunderstood though.
Yeah.
And it's misunderstood in the fact that people wear them all day long.
Yeah.
And you need to wear them strategically, right? Yes. Like, that's an interesting thing, right? So the point is I'm going to come back to how it works, but I wanted to kind of make this point from a general wellness standpoint.
Well, no, just to comment on that real quickly though, like what you're getting at is, like, you're not going to replace sleep, time in nature, moving your body, eating clean, drinking clean, unadulterated water.
We all accept those too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that, there's no replacement for that. All of these other things fall in the category of possibly supplemental, possibly helpful, when incremental. When you can't get enough time in those situations, whether you're traveling or something like this, as helpful things to bring you back into harmony. I don't personally like the term biohacking, but it's like, how much are we leaning on, I got to purchase all these different
things. Yes. Yeah. And that's kind of my point of, like, when you look at what's actually happening within the body, to not address the EMF though as a core pillar in our current modern world, I think is a mistake. Mm-hmm. And I think that I wish more people would talk about it, but not from a point of view of like, be worried, be scared that you're poisoning your body every day. It's actually, how can I do more to get my body in an electromagnetic state? How can I balance electromagnetic fields, grounding? I know these are just like pockets of culture that talk about these things, but I don't think that they're giving enough weight to what's actually happening in the body. Totally because agree. It's not little it's not incremental. Like these are foundational like shifts in physiology. And I think that's my point of like, you can take your multivitamins, you can spend all your money on protein shakes, multivitamins, green drinks, whatever it is that we're all spending money on. You never know if they work. You can never measure it. You have your own anecdotal, like N=1 study that says, I feel better, placebo, no, whatever you just never know. I can show you that ours works.
Yeah.
I can show you the shift in physiology, and it's impactful. It's so impactful that it's hard to say. It shouldn't be part of your strategy, if that makes sense.
That makes
and
a
I
lot
think
of
that's my
sense.
point of like, when you can level up your body to such a high degree, nothing else you're going to do after that or before that is going to matter.
Yeah.
Because that's such a big jump. That's my point.
Makes
That's
a
my
lot of
point.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that helpful context, let's get into how the tech actually
Okay.
works, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there
Yeah.
and a lot of conflation with other EMF,
Yeah.
so-called EMF mitigation, quote, technologies that
Yeah.
are out there, right? And that's not even what yours is about necessarily. Then I would like to get into some of the studies that you have
Sure.
done.
Number one, it's not a blocker. And I would caution, I'm not going to talk bad about other brands.
Yeah.
I think that the blocking companies, though, should be better about helping people understand the risks of blocking, because there's an argument made that nobody should be using anything that blocks EMF, period. And I know I just said I want to talk bad about other brands, but I feel like people need to understand the risk. And then what I mean by that is, you got to understand that EMF is 3-dimensional. It's not a laser. It's not shooting directionally. It's everywhere. And if I'm wearing a hat that's supposed to block EMF, what I did is I just put a lid on my head, because both things are true. It will block from the outside, but it'll also block from the inside. And knowing that your whole body is a conductive antenna of electricity and energy, all of my body's conducting it, but I just put a lid on it. So now what happens when EMF hits that lid is it's bouncing, it's amplified, it's magnified, it's bouncing around, it's rebounding. So now I've amplified what's going on in my head. And two, there's a great story. Dr. Jill, she's an amazing practitioner and an MD in Colorado. She's got a great story. I would encourage people to go check out her work. Just a fantastic story, Dr. Jill. And
What's her last name?
Carnahan.
Carnahan, Dr. Jill
Yeah.
Carnahan. Okay.
Yeah, she's got a great story. Grew up on like an organic farm, but decided in order for her to make a real difference in the world, even though she grew up with like this organic like background, she had to go conventional like MD. While she was in med school as a 20-something-year-old, she got breast cancer. And then that derailed her whole health because she got, I think, radiation, chemo, all that stuff. She beat it, and she's older now. And but the health effects that occurred thereafter, she's been battling with her whole life. And so now you go into her facility, she's got like everything's accounted for. Her walls are like double, like there's no outside air that can get in, and like it's really cool. So she's awesome. But she shared this story about being on an airplane, and she's hypersensitive to EMF to the point like it like her nervous system attacks itself, which is common, especially people that have like Lyme disease and like there's certain things that where people develop this sensitivity, and she's hypersensitive. And so she talks about it as like a burning and tingling and just a burning sensation. So she buys this like full-on suit to wear on the plane because she's going to Australia to do this thing, and so there's just this opening for her face, right? So think of like this full-on suit. And she said that she just burned the whole time.
Wow.
And it was so intense because she's wearing the suit. And then she realized later why. And so on the way back, she didn't wish, so she has this whole story, but it's just, you don't think about it. So when you think about blocking as an effective solution, it's just not possible. And the other thing that I would tell people if they buy a phone case or whatever, if it was truly blocking, it wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality. Your phone works because of the transfer of information through EMF. And that's just one quick, easy way to test if it works. So, okay, so then how can we now live in this world of the EMF? And that's where really Aries, comes in is it's a way to tune the environment in a way that creates a field that is more compatible with the body. So do a quick amount of physics. The way that I think about this isn't the best metaphor because from a physics standpoint, it's not 100% accurate,
Okay.
but it's a great way to visualize it. So if you think of a disco ball, and let's say a disco ball was in here and the light's all around us, it's three-dimensional, the room's full of light. If we have a disco ball in here, what's going to happen? You're going to see this light be controlled. And because of the geometry of the shape, we're able to then control that energy. And keep in mind, light is EMF. It's on the electromagnetic spectrum. So that disco ball, it's going to reflect light in a controlled manner. Now, reflecting is not the same thing that we're doing. We're diffracting. But it's the same principle, which is we're using geometry to shape an energy field. And so we're using the ambient energy, the man-made energy, or really any source of EMF would do this, your body, the earth, whatever. It's just going to be a little weaker. And so through the geometry of the silicon resonator, that's the core. And let's talk about silicon in general. Why is it that silicon is like gold on this planet? It's what powers computers, what powers everything. It's because it can be manipulated to shape energy in a controlled way. And it's highly conductive, and it's a way to control charges. And so you can dope it, you can do these different things to change charges. So the core of our product is a resonator chip. And if you look at it, you can see etchings in it. And as you move, you see like a fractal design. And fractals are used in telecommunications for antennas. And the idea of a fractal is in ours in particular, is it's a repeating pattern that increases the perimeter without increasing the area. So what I mean by that is if we take a shape, it's fixed in area, and then we keep chopping it down, let's say half by half by half by half by half, we'll never get to zero. And that's what a fractal is. You're essentially taking a shape with a similar pattern, and we're shrinking it down over and over and over again. So we've increased the amount of geometric, think of the disco ball, in the disco ball, there's finite numbers of little reflectors. We have over 1 million different grooves at varying degree of sizes that go from this tiny shape down to as close to zero as possible. And so what that does is allow you to have to create a broad range of frequencies. And I won't go to this direction, but there's the difference between linear wave interactions and nonlinear wave interactions. And when you're talking about what we're talking about nonlinear, which is the ability for, well, I'll butcher this, so I'll be careful, but because I don't like to antagonize the actual physics guys on the internet. But a lot of people that are in the telecommunications industry understand linear actions because they're predictable. Nonlinear are far less predictable. But their idea of like coupling and resonance, that's where we start to get into these nonlinear effects. And so, but what that allows us to do is essentially create, just like the disco ball, it interacts with the EMF around, and the electrons excite within the grooves of these fractals, right? And then they, based upon our geometry, which is really what the core of our technology is that specific geometry.
Are you able to reveal like what the specific geometry?
Yeah, again, like it's on the site. Like cool. Like I said, as our path to becoming a public company. Again, I'll kind of know if I said this on air or not, but Aries is a public company.
Yeah.
So people can buy the stock, people can trade the stock, and they can basically everything we do is public. So like our patents, all that stuff is online. You can go look at the math. You can try to do it yourself if you want. And we do have the patent for protecting biological organisms from electromagnetic radiation, and which is just got granted in the U.S. and but it's an international patent, which is really cool. So we have a bunch of design patents and things like that, but this one's a really powerful one for the fact that it's a function patent. So or a method patent. And so so people can go online and check all that out. But the math of it is really critical, because you're talking about what we want to do, what we are aiming to do was take that energy, organize it, and create what would be referred to as a biotropic field. or biotropic field, which is a field that is more stable and suitable for like supportive of physiology.
Okay.
And so what you're talking about, okay, your body has fields or a field, and you talk about man-made EMF, and then you talk about Aries. All three of them will have a different field. So what our product does is it actually uses the energy around it to then create a stable, coherent field. So then all other waves that come interacting with that, because it's stable, coherent, will then change the behavior and the overall state of the field within our stable field.
I'm familiar with that principle because we talked about this off air, but so my friend Eileen McCusick, who has written several books on the human biofield and electric health, she always says this quote, and I say this almost every episode: a strong coherent field overtakes and entrains weaker incoherent fields. So that's
exactly
basically
right.
operating
exactly
on that principle.
Right. Yep.
Wow.
Exactly right.
Wow.
And so it's interesting that you say that, because it's easy to understand. It's hard when people want to make it hard. And we've had a lot of people attack us, obviously, like everybody that I think is every company has their naysayers, and we've had some really big YouTube channels try to go after us. And part of me, I'm empathetic, because we are talking about things that are difficult to understand. And I do believe that if you were able to talk to some of these content creators, and if they understood it and they got behind it, I think they would get behind your mission versus try to tear you down.
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, from a logic standpoint, the amount of rigor that went into us becoming public, like, you can't take, half the products that we're talking about from an EMF standpoint, they would never be able to go to the public markets. They would never pass the tests and the third party validation and the trade commissions and all the things that we had to do. It was a 3-year process, cost millions of dollars, and way more studies that we had to do, peer reviewed, multiple different institutions had to review this stuff. We weren't even part of it because we couldn't be.
And you're not Pfizer coming in with like all the industry support and like corrupted,
the lobbying and all that.
Lobbying.
Dude, not even close, dude. So
if anything, you're coming from the opposite perspective because telecommunications technologies are the ones that lobby.
Yeah, and we've definitely butted some heads.
Yeah, I bet you have.
In that process. So I say that to really help people understand, like, number one, I've said this multiple times now on this conversation, I'm definitely a marketer. I'm definitely a storyteller, and I'm willing to tell a story that gets people to buy our product because I believe in it and I believe everybody needs it. At the same time, I really would encourage people to go educate themselves and find the resources. Don't listen to me. Please don't listen to me. Go do your research, because when you go do your research and you come out the other side of it, you'll be our bigger fan. You'll be a bigger fan of everything that I just said, and you'll become a mouthpiece for us. Because when you go get educated and you understand the negative effects of EMF, but also the fact that you can actually create, beneficial, physiological outcomes by just thinking about tuning your body more. Again, forget about the protection element, just starting from a place of like, I want to live the best life I possibly can. Managing your electrical system is part of that. Like I said, mineralizing is a form of stabilizing your biofield, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're doing those things, you just don't even know you're doing it. You're grounding. Well, why are you doing that? That's stabilizing your field, right? Like, you're doing these things, you just don't understand the connectivity to what we're talking about.
Amen.
At a macro level.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my point of, like, when people go do their own research, they will become spokespersons for me.
Yeah.
So that's my hope, right? So please go do your own research. Don't listen to me. I am a marketer. I've told you that.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, that's kind of what I did before going into this podcast, because I was like somewhat skeptical of this tech. Because I've heard about Aries Tech for a long time. I've seen like other people post on social media. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, my strategy has always been to like turn my Wi-Fi off at night, to sleep with grounding sheets that are legitimate ones, and then spend as much time outside and off devices as I possibly can, while also balancing the understanding that I do work on these devices.
Yeah.
But then when I actually dove in, I realized, okay, there actually is something to this. And I want to get into some of the studies you've done next. But before we go there, just so I'm clear on how it works, it's more about harmonization and harmonizing one's environment with the non-native EMFs that are present, right?
I tend to stay away from the word harmony
Okay.
and harmonization. From a physics standpoint, that's probably the better word.
Okay.
Harmonics are part of the harmonics of the man-made EMF that are the problem.
Yeah.
But I think that word gets so overused.
Yes, oversaturated for
yeah,
sure.
that I like it's one of my out of bounds words. Optimization is another one that I don't use.
Everyone uses that.
Yeah, it's just a throwaway word.
Yeah.
And so I just like to say, hey, let's be more clear. Let's use better language and find better words because we have them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're forced to use them, what would you then say? And so for harmony, I hate that it's one of my out of bounds words because from a physics standpoint, it actually is the word.
Yeah.
But what I would say is if you want to understand the physics, it's pretty simple because you're talking about constructive and destructive interference.
Got it.
And the simple way to think about that is constructive interference would be amplifying or two waves that are maybe in phase that will then amplify and compound and increase in power. Destructive would be two waves that cancel each other out, which is noise canceling headphones are a good example of destructive interference. And so what happens is when you create this stable, coherent field, there's a lot of interference patterns that are occurring. And so it's tuned to allow certain frequencies to continue to pass through, which is why in our studies you see a stimulating effect. It's why you see your baseline increase. And it's one of the reasons why. And our team internally will debate what's more effective, stimulating the body with beneficial frequencies or removing the negative frequencies.
Because it's doing both.
Because it's doing both.
Wow.
And so this is a debate. I think it's person dependent,
Yeah.
but that's what I think the conclusion we've come to.
And it works across this full spectrum of EMFs that are present.
Yes.
How does that work?
That's the fractal geometry. Like I said, that's why
so many geometric patterns are sort of overlaid on top of themselves microscopically, if that's a word, within this technology.
Yeah, it's a nanotechnology.
Yeah.
So you're talking about one thing that we have a hard time with is there are only a few people that can do the level of the etchings that we do, the lithography that we do.
It's funny you say that because that's immediately where my mind went when you talked about how many patterns are on this.
And we have a new version that we're working on. I don't have enough details on it to be able to talk about it yet. And like I said, as a public company, I always have to be careful what I say ahead of time.
Sure.
But it is as an innovation we're thinking about all the time. Like, where do we go from here? Where does technology allow us to go? What can we do next? And as we talk about my vision of creating the infrastructure for the environments that we live, work, play, in, I'm thinking about how can I make how can we come up with products that actually you don't even have to think about anymore? You don't have to go out and buy our product because it's just built in your building. It's built in your phone.
Incredible.
And that's really where our research and our innovation is going is more of like, I always compare to the catalytic converter on the car.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us in the room will remember when catalytic converters weren't standard. People now don't even know what I'm talking about. But the only reason they know about it is because they get them stolen off their Prius I guess a Prius is a bad example, but I'm trying to remember the cars that get them stolen a lot because they're accessible, but they have metal in them. They have a rare earth metals in them that are worth a ton of money. I think I don't remember what metal it is. Anyways, what a catalytic converter does is, I think of my time in LA in the late 90s, you couldn't see the ocean, you couldn't see the mountains because of the amount of smog, and it's just the amount of pollution typically from the automobile. And so you just lived in this world of smog and you couldn't see anything, and you couldn't go outside on certain days. The kids didn't have recess because of smog day because it was so bad. And then the catalytic converter became mandatory for every vehicle. And what it did, it neutralizes those pollutants. And now you can see the ocean and you can see the mountains and you can go outside and play. And that's what I see Aries as for electromagnetic smog is the catalytic converter. You don't even think about it anymore. We just buy the car, has it on it. It's nothing I do as a consumer. That's the world that I see. So our innovation leads us that direction. And how can we just do that? Because it's difficult to go one by one to every consumer to do this.
Totally.
It's a fear story. It's not a healthy, supportive story. It's not, hey, my water is the best drinking water. It's, you have really dirty water. and you need to fix it.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a different story. So,
Totally.
your question on the fractals, that's a easy thing for people to go research and understand what I'm talking about. But cell phone communication and really wireless communication is really built on fractal antennas. And fractals are actually patterns that occur in nature too. So it's really, they're inspired by nature. And so the ideas of fractals in using fractal antennas to transmit and decode information and electromagnetic or transmissions were inspired by nature. And so the idea that you could use this self-repeating pattern but make it small, what that does is, I mentioned that it doesn't increase in area, so that's the size.
Yep.
But it increases in perimeter.
Makes sense.
So yeah, when you think about an antenna, that basically takes an antenna that would have been gigantic and says, no, we're going to constrain the area, but we're going to continue to make these fractals down to this nano scale. Now it allows us to go the opposite direction, inward instead of outward.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we're talking about. So that's how we're able to cover a broad range of frequencies.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. It's basically that you are increasing when you say the perimeter, you're talking about the metaphysics of it and not the actual surface area physicality.
Actually, both.
Okay,
yeah,
both.
because if you look at the design, your logo is a perfect example. If you kept doing that, if you kept doing these circular designs and just kept getting smaller and smaller to like a nano scale, how many? Go back to the disco ball.
Yeah. If
I kept taking those mirrors, breaking them into smaller and smaller, identical sizes, but down to like 1 million of them on one space, the number of tiny little reflective patterns that would be created would be incredible, right? That's my point.
Got it.
And so the ball didn't get bigger. The pieces of the mirror just got smaller. And
so it is, in a weird way, increasing the angles and surface area of the ball. That's okay.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? And so,
totally makes sense.
Instead of having, let's say our ball that we're starting with has 1,000 pieces of reflective material on it, and they're all the same. And then we're like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to go from 1,000 to 1 million.
Yeah.
But we're not going to increase the size of the ball.
Makes sense.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's more angles and I would imagine in geometries on this than there are in this whole apartment complex.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, and they're tuned so that as the electrons start to move within the grooves and they come out of it, it's controlled. So we can tune the different frequencies based upon the geometry. The same way that you could tune the disco ball based upon the shapes and the angles that it reflects at.
Is there anything available to measure the field coming off of this? We
get that question a lot. That's actually something that our team was working on. And I'll share a quick aside, because one of the professors, a lot of the team that works on this, they're getting pretty old now, and we're working on ways that we can start to transfer this information. The research got pretty disrupted during COVID, and we've been working since 2019, 2020, because again, it's global. So this isn't just a North America thing. This is global. A lot of our research comes out of Europe, UK, some contributions from India, Canada, US, Russia, Germany. It's global. And so when you look at the different institutions, the people that have contributed, it's well over 50 different institutions, like I said, hundreds of different researchers all over the globe.
Incredible.
COVID really disrupted that, and we've been working really hard to bring that back together. One of the professors, though, that's been around since the early days, he runs a major institution, and I'm not going to give you his name because I don't want people blowing him up. And because that's happened before, and he's like, would you please not give my information out? Anyways, I asked him just recently, because every time I talk to him, it's like an education, right?
Yeah.
And he's a professor of like photonics, and this is like his thing, right?
Yeah.
And material science and things like that. And he's been doing it for decades. So I asked him, like, why do you do this? And he's like, in any scientist's career, you hope that you find the one thing that you basically dent the universe with. And he's like, I believe that Aries is that thing.
Wow.
And it was really powerful because like he is one of the foremost like thought leaders in this space of material science, photonics, and the things that were to holography, which the study of like 3-dimensional, and
Fractals
so
is holography.
yeah, like it's and anyway, so I thought that was really cool. But he's been, his information that he has sometimes makes my head explode. But he's working on, they've already done it in the laboratory. First of all, he gets mad because I asked him that. I'm like, look, man, this changes everything. If I can show people the field, visualize it, they can measure it. And he's like, because his understanding and knowledge is like in a completely different place, that he's like, why do you need that? Like his whole world is around understanding this invisible energy, right?
Yep.
And so they've been working on it. So they did it in like a couple different ways. They did it through using heat, and they did it through using light. And so that we're able to visualize it. Well, we've had a difficult time is getting to show up on camera though. Got it. And so we can do it like in the laboratory and you can see it with your eye. It's been difficult to do with a camera. And I'm not sure if it's just, we have to do different kind of camera or whatever. So we're working on that. I think we're really close. But everyone's wants that, right?
Incredible.
And people want to use like a spectrum analyzer or the EMF readers. That's maybe the biggest thing that we get. That's
a really important point, because I've heard you mention this before too. Like people use an EMF reader and you're nothing's happening, but it's complete. It's a category error. It is because it only it measures the amount of energy that's present. We don't change the presence of the energy. You're not blocking the EMF.
Yeah, it's not blocking it. It's not making it go away at all. And so what we're doing is we're restructuring the environment. We're reshaping the field and just making it more stable. And which is also why your data transmission still works. Yeah, is because we're not disrupting the data carrying signals. It's the field that it's contained in. And so so we'll have that though. The other one he's using that I don't understand it as well is an EMF ability to measure the EMF.
Interesting.
Spectrum analyzers are a little difficult too because they're narrow band. Like you can say, I want to analyze this field. I want to analyze this field. And that can be a little tricky too. So, and I don't understand that one as well. But so we're close. I'm excited about that because I think a lot of that conversation goes away. At the end of the day, though, we exist to support physiology. So people want to. You don't ever question your green drink. No one ever wants to understand the mechanics of the chlorophyll in that. And this is why I'm like, I struggle a lot with this because our research is all on physiology. We have the physics side of it too, but the physics was like, how do we go harvest the organic materials that then support the physiology? Yeah. That's like our chlorophyll, our like, how do we get all of that, get it together, and then create this product that then supports physiology? Because we know that these things are good. So although we have the physics research, the physics, to find someone that understands physics and physiology in these narrow fields is really difficult. Yeah. Because I need to go get a physics guy that's like, hey, here's the problem that I'm solving. I want to create this effect. He doesn't even think about the physiology. Right. And vice versa. And the physiology guy is like, okay, if you could create a stable environment, this would potentially happen. He doesn't know how to create the stable environment. Right. So then I go back, does he get my point? And so it's this weird relationship that we have with this research team, and where you're constantly trying to mediate and figure out and move one, move the other, move one, move the other. So a lot of our research is on physiology. I think that's where it should be, though. It is. Anyway. That's what we set out to do. That's the whole point, right? Yes, that's our mission, was to support physiology. It wasn't to go create physics breakthroughs in the process. I'm interested in both. And it's funny because on the show we talk about both. I have two more questions pertaining to the tech itself, and then I want to get into some of the effects of the tech on the physiology. So when it comes to the field that it creates, I've heard you mention before that it is in direct proportion, maybe that's not the correct term, but response to the non-native EMFs present. Can you talk about that a little bit and like make sense of that for me? Yeah. So there's the irony is the more EMF that's present, the better the product works. That's what wild. You're saying. Yes. And it's a little bit, this is again, bad metaphor, but it's bad because like the physics aren't the same. Yeah. But it gives you an idea. It's like if I have a hose nozzle and I turn the hose on, there's a certain amount of, let's say, gallons per minute or PSI, whatever you want to measure that in, that's going to come through that. And the more that I turn on, the more that's going to come through that nozzle and the bigger the spray is going to be. I can control the shape of the spray, which is what we're doing. And, I can modify that based upon our angles and the fractals and things like that we've talked about. But the more energy that's coming through that, the bigger that it's going to be. And we talked about the resonant effect or the nonlinear effects. So the more energy that's in the room, the more that resonant effect and the coupling occurs so that it's expanding even bigger.
Interesting. So if I were to go, let's say, right next to a millimeter wave tower with this on, does that then mean that the field this is producing is also expanding?
Yes.
That is wild.
Yes.
That is wild.
It is wild. I know it's counterintuitive, but it also, like I said, it makes sense. That's why I'm like, it's like, there's just more energy present.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more energy that's present, the more ability there is to stabilize the energy.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know where the point of where it ends.
Yeah.
I don't have that answer.
Nor do we even want to get to that point though, either, because that's another question that I had too on this side of things. And I could really save this for later, but it's probably appropriate to ask it now, is, do you see where this could potentially, given that, we're going to get into how effective it is, assuming it's effective, and we're going to get there, that this could be used as almost a crutch where people are just like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to immerse myself in non-native EMFs all the time now? I
mean, that's how I am. I mean, I don't really think about it all that much. I don't really change my behaviors. Like my phone's probably within a decent distance of my bed. I have a lot of Aries products, so I'm not really stressed about it. And I'm not engineering my environment in a way that I probably once did.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read some of like the pro athletes that have had really long careers, they almost always had some conscious effort to minimize EMF exposure, specifically in the bedroom, where they train, where they recover. And I mean, like the greats, like they get on the latter part of their career. Aaron Rodgers gets made fun of a lot because he's always talking about crazy things. Well, EMF was one of those crazy things that he talked about, but he's had a long career, right? And there's like I said, I won't call these different people out, but
I've heard behind the scenes Tom Brady is the same,
I think it's in his book. It's in his book. Novak, it's in his book.
Yeah.
And
some of the best.
Yeah, and I would say that that a lot of these types of guys are customers as well, to give you some kind of more context. And we ship a lot of products to professional stadiums.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
Yeah.
And to homes of these individuals. So and not saying the ones we just talked about, like I said, I'm not going on record saying that.
Gotcha.
But you get my point of like, there's a reason why. But I personally don't. Like I travel a lot. Like I just told you, like I haven't been home in 6 weeks. I've been traveling nonstop for 6 weeks, and just got home last night. I don't really think about it, but I will tell you, I become way more obsessive about. I didn't always wear you have the Flex on. I have one on right now too. I didn't always wear it, but I have it on my phone. I'm like, okay, that's good enough on this. The more data that we collected and the more live like things that we were doing, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know how to say it anymore. Like, we did a particular demo, and people can go watch this one. I think the one we did with Chad Fincham, NASCAR driver, or Tim Welsh, the trainer for Sean O'Malley, the UFC fighter, those were so compelling that, I mean, people in the room, we had a pretty big audience with the Tim Welsh one, that camera people on his team, they were stunned.
Wow.
Like when we edited that one afterwards, the amount of background noise we had of like people going like the noise of people, like it was stunning.
Yeah.
His heart rate variability, and this is common for the athletes, to stay locked, in that fight or flight mode is pretty incredible. Like, and it's not healthy. I mean, that's why, they burn out. That's why athletes need to really engineer recovery so much. It has to be a practice.
Yeah.
And they rely on rituals. They rely on these things because they can't move in between. Well, turns out EMF is an antagonist. Your body, because it constantly feels stressed, it constantly feels like it has to fight. And so when you have these athletes that are tuned in this way to fight, to do these things, their ability to move between states is challenged because of the EMF. So you saw him move, like, you'll have to watch it, but it was like he went from like a low 60 heart rate variability to upper 80s.
Wow.
In like minutes.
Wow.
And with no, like, he had no idea what we're doing, what we were testing. Like, this was just, we're just like, okay, sit still, do the thing. Okay, sit still, do the thing. No idea, right? And
yeah, so you're in saying that, you're talking about placebo, no.
Yeah. And at the same time, if I was like, because keep in mind, we're testing the brain waves too, like, all the different elements within the brain, and the way that the tests are being done, they basically eliminate that ability to rig it, and again, it's not my team doing it. I'm hiring a doctor at doctor's rates, by the way, to do this. And I'm getting no favors. And so a whole day with the doctor is like an attorney on steroids.
Yeah.
So, especially when you're playing for travel and things like that. But the point is like, it's compelling. And so you see that and you're like, wow, what do the kids look like? What do kids who don't have a developed system look like? Like, when I mean what developed system means, their DNA isn't completely closed and structured. Their system, their skulls aren't developed. Their cell, like, all of it is underdeveloped. It's
much
still
more
happening.
Impressionable.
Way more impressionable and less defensible.
Yep.
Less resilient.
Yeah.
And that starts to become, or like, okay, why do, again, I'm not saying that cell phones cause cancer, but there is a correlation between breast cancer and testicular cancer. Dr. Huberman has a really good podcast, multiple, on the effects of EMF on testosterone, sperm production, sperm health, female reproductive system. And I think he says the punchline early on, which is, without a doubt, conclusively, the cell phone has a negative effect on testosterone and reproductive systems. And he just says it right at the very beginning of that. Like, you can save watching it, because that's what he says. And he also said there's no time period where it was like, okay, after 10 minutes, it was like, it was instant. And that's, to be honest, that's what we've learned too, is we used to do like 10-minute exposure, 20-minute exposure. And now we're down to like 3 to 5, because most people are so sensitive.
Yeah.
And so where I was going with that, I don't even remember the original question, but the compelling evidence of those demonstrations, if people really want to start to understand why EMFs matter, again, try not to be like, hey, your cell phone's killing you, but like, EMFs matter to support health. Your body only exists because of energy.
Mm.
If you didn't have that, like, all life is energy. I don't know who said that. Einstein, somebody important from a long time ago, said that. And that's what they meant. Like, it's the fact that we have not progressed the science in a big way to support that is really interesting to me.
Mm.
But that's where I think Aries feels that, is like, hey, we're on a mission to show you that you should be very thoughtful about supporting your electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really important. And we have a lot of evidence to show you why.
Most healthcare today operates on an outdated mechanistic model, treating the body like a battlefield rather than a self-healing system. You wait months for an appointment only to receive a rush diagnosis that labels you rather than truly understanding your unique health. Even in holistic health, many practitioners rely on endless lab tests and supplement protocols, addressing symptoms instead of the root cause. And the result? Another prescription or supplement regimen that merely suppresses or masks symptoms rather than facilitating true healing, whether the imbalance was physical, emotional, energetic, or a mix of all three. And that's why Dr. Tom Cowan co-founded the nnEMFs Clinic, to offer something radically different. As one of the most respected natural health doctors in the world, Dr. Cowan has spent decades challenging conventional medicine and advancing a deeper understanding of human biology, water, and natural health. His work isn't just about rejecting the mainstream, it's about offering a more truthful, biologically coherent approach for healing. The nnEMFs Clinic recognizes that health isn't about fighting disease, it's about restoring balance. You're not a diagnosis, you're an individual with a unique story, and healing should honor that. With virtual consultations available worldwide, The clinic offers a flat rate monthly membership that gives you direct access to practitioners who take the time to actually listen. Members also get exclusive health live streams, a resource library, and live sessions covering everything from biofield tuning and breathwork to movement and meditation, all designed to support whole body healing. And if you're not ready for a membership, you can book a one-time appointment, sign up for an enrichment-only membership for the healing modalities alone, or schedule a free connection session with one of the care team members to see how the New Biology Clinic can help in your specific situation. This isn't about keeping you dependent on doctors. It's about making you sovereign over your health. Head to newbiologyclinic.com and use code THEWAYFORWARD, and that's spelled The Way, F-O-R-W-A-R-D, for $50 off account activation, or just head to the show notes for more info. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com for $150 off. Your body already knows how to heal, and New Biology Clinic helps you remember. I love that. Yeah, the initial question, yeah, you did answer it sufficiently for me, was like, do you feel like this could be used as a crutch at some point? But you also talked about at the beginning or in the middle of this episode, the importance of sunlight, grounding, and all those things still too. Because like my mind goes to that which we can't even measure at this point, and the psycho-spiritual, for lack of a better term, implications of being surrounded by modern life almost exclusively, and not surrounding yourself, I like to call, with the energy and the fingerprints of God out in nature. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's a whole separate category. But nonetheless, we are still operating in this modern life. We're doing it right now. I do it frequently. That's what I do as a vocation, right? So if there is something that can help, I'll use this word, harmonize the environment in a way that is not as impactful negatively on my health, and if in many ways beneficial to my health, that is a huge plus. And so I think this is a perfect segue into some of the studies that you guys have done.
Yeah. We've done all sorts of studies, everything from like water to blood cells to cancer cells to rat studies. I would say the ones that I get most excited about, and I kind of mess with the team a little bit with this. I was like, look, as a marketer, if I was to start this company over again, I would have started with our bee studies. And
like bee as in the insect,
as in
bee.
Like the insects.
Wow.
Because nobody's ever mad about saving bees. But for some reason, you pick on someone's cell phone, all of a sudden they're like, no, that's not true. That's, no. But bees, let's save the bees. And so the other thing I would point out is you can do a couple quick Google searches from reputable magazines and publications and start to go down that rabbit hole of what's happening in nature, and the transatlantic internet cable that goes across the ocean. The crustaceans, are deformed. The reproductive has gone way down. Like there's a lot of damage being done to the life along that. And that's like in, don't quote me, but let's say National Geographic or some sort of magazine like Nature or something like that, right? The offshore wind farms and the disruptive nature that those have caused to the mammals that use the Earth's electromagnetic radiator field for navigation, whales washing up on the shore, sharks all of a sudden showing up in places they didn't show up before, and birds, migratory bird patterns. There was one I read recently in the UK where they did a lot of pigeon racing, where they would do they'd race pigeons, right? And they used sight and also the Earth's electromagnetic field to navigate. Well, it's almost completely not a thing anymore because the birds are having a tough time navigating.
Wow.
So you have all these things in nature that are actually being talked about out in the open. And everyone's like, oh yeah, let's do something. Well, that makes a lot of sense. But don't take my cell phone away. It's like that weird thing, right? Like it's acceptable. So the bee studies to me are some of my favorite. And because they're powerful, they're overwhelming in a lot of ways too. Like when you see the information, it's hard to ignore it. And so we've been doing, I guess, a 3-year field study. That's about 3 years now with beekeepers in Canada, hundreds of hives, maybe thousands. And we're doing them in similar areas. So it's controlled in a lot of way where it's observational right now because we want to formulate like, okay, how would we do this in a controlled way? And but the results have been astonishing. We have like videos of hives that are like buried in the snow, 10 feet down, and it's just thriving. And because they're able to do their job. And what people don't understand is like, well, we have this massive problem with bees where the mites take over, or they can't defend the hive. And then one thing that people don't know about bees is because it's counter to how we think about nature, which is about 20% of the hive does nothing. They just fly around. Ants, it's like 30%, which I freaking hate ants.
Especially fire ants.
Fire ants. Yeah, it's so bad, dude.
You live in Texas too.
I do.
You get it. Yeah,
I do.
And fire ants here, man.
Before I came here,
existence.
my wife's growing jujubes and a bunch of other things that she probably shouldn't grow in Austin.
Yeah.
And but years of soil, fixing.
Yeah.
She's been able to grow some wild things, but the ants just destroy.
Yeah,
everything.
It's horrible. I remember I had this really nice, rich compost pile that I've been working on for a long time that was filled with worms. Like, it smelled good. I left for a week and came back. Fire ants had completely taken over. It was all dust. I'm like,
dust. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah, it frustrates me so much.
About 30% of ants, I think it is, and about 20% of bees, they don't do anything. And that's nature's way to optimize survival. And so what happens is, at any moment, let's say a hive gets attacked, well, those bees can now activate and they can come defend. But more importantly, they might bump into pollen somewhere else. Because once the system is developed where they're like, okay, we know pollen's here, they go back and forth, they're doing their thing, and there's a system that occurs, then you just have 20% of these guys just bumping around into things out there and hopefully finding something. And that's kind of a wild thought. Well, what happens with EMF is it disrupts their ability to navigate. They get lost, they don't return. And so the hives die. Or if they're getting attacked, they don't have replacements, they get attacked and they don't die. Or within the hive, they're not able to communicate and properly, spring into action. Mm-hmm. There's all these kind of interesting things that occur in nature. And so with Aries, those problems go away.
Wow.
The survivability of the hives goes way up, and the health of the hives goes way up, and the yield goes way up, and of the honey that's being produced. It's pretty wild. And so those studies, and they're on the website, some honeybee studies. There's, like I said, some rat studies. There's cancer cells. There's water, structuring water on there, because EMF messes with the structure of water. Yep. And your body being that it's water,
Put two and two together.
It clusters, the molecules cluster and things like that. And so that's what you see in grounding too. Mm-hmm. Like when you ground, you see that discharge, and then the spacing relaxes. Yep. And then when you get the static built up, they clump together again. And so you see a similar effect. And so there's a lot of studies on there. The ones I get excited about when it comes to the human stuff, it really is the EEG, the heart rate variability, really demonstrating. And these are controlled. Like, these are like, we have a Faraday cage. So we're controlling the amount of EMF in the space. Yeah. It's not like we're chilling in this room. Now, the reason why I do the demonstrations that we do is because once I read those studies, I was like, how hard is this? Let's start calling some people. So I started calling like random neuroscientists that would take my call. And I just started asking questions. I'm like, what would happen if I replicated this study in a living room or in an office? And he was like, well, you're going to be responding whatever's in the environment. But if we establish a baseline and you use yourself as the control, and we can essentially do this. And I've done it now with multiple neuroscientists. And the first time we ever did it, which is probably one of our more viral videos, I never even met him. He just showed up, and we were in LA at a studio. He showed up like 5 minutes before we started shooting. Didn't even have time to really talk with him. We just started going, and we were kind of learning as we were going, and he was learning as he was going.
What did he think about it?
It's funny. If you've been around scientists, they don't really have a lot of emotion.
None.
I was like, and I'm always like,
I've interviewed a few on the show.
I'm like, that's amazing. And he's like, You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I can't read him. So I'm like, what are you seeing, dude? What, because I don't know either, right? Like,
That's so true.
I'm just reading the studies that I have.
Right.
And this is the first time I'm doing this live.
Yeah.
And I'm stressed, right? Like, what happens if if we don't get the results? And
He showed no response.
no
He's
response.
like, your guy.
He's just like, And I can't wait. I'm like, bro, tell me, like, what are you seeing?
Yeah.
And he's like, there's a cooling effect. That word, I wish he never said it because everyone automatically goes to temperature.
Yeah.
But what he's referring to is when you're looking at these maps of the brain, like red is like hyperactive and
Yeah.
like blue is like
Calming
the
effect would be-
calming
yeah,
effect
would be
is
a
what he
better
should have
word.
said.
Yeah.
But what he's talking about is you're looking at a heat map essentially of
Yes.
the brain, and he's like, there's a cool. So anyways, that's something that's haunted us forever because he used that word, and that's
Yeah.
not really what he meant in the context.
Yeah.
And that was like the first one. And then we continued to come up with all sorts of different ways related to like a VR headset. We did a minute of exposure, 10 minutes exposure. We did like 15 hours of just like everything we could think of in that moment. And he walked out of there like, I don't understand enough about your technology. I had sent him a bunch of stuff to read beforehand. I don't
Yeah.
know if he read it or not. I had one phone call with him, just asked if he would do it. And he said, sure. And well, he didn't say sure. He wanted to be like, sign this, sign that,
Yeah,
and whatever.
yeah.
I have final say and whatever. And so the outcome of that was really, really intriguing to him. Now, I will tell you that same doctor just this year did show some emotion. And the story that he shared with me, he called me. It was like a weird time too. It was like a Friday night, and he calls me. And first of all, I can never get a hold of him. He's really busy. He runs multiple clinics. He's all over the place. I mean, he's a leader in this space of neurotherapy and neuroscience. He manufactures the hardware, the software, runs these clinics. They're FDA cleared devices. I mean, it's a big operation that he has. And so I can barely ever get a hold of him. So when he calls me, I take the call. I think I was in New York. I was like at this important thing, and I step out and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I got to tell you the story, man. He said, this young man came through our clinic today, and this doctor that I know brought him to see me. They were on the way to a psychiatric ward, and they said, we got one last stop. I want to go see this doctor. And they told the family, I don't know the kid's age. I don't know that aspect of it. But my doctor guy, he says he comes in, he's wearing like a hoodie. He's completely covered from head to toe, and he's wearing a hoodie completely stretched over his face. And he just described, he just feels like he's being attacked, and his skin is burning, and like he can't, no one believes him.
Wow.
So he feels like he's going psychotic, and he's like, no one will believe me. And so after some time, the doctor sits him down, gets him comfortable, like gets him to talk a little bit, to describe things. And he just said, hey, I want you to hold this. And he gave him the flex. And the kid his whole state changed. And he talked to him, he was able to do the brain scan. He was able to basically treat the kid. And had he not had our product there, the kid would be in a psychiatric ward.
Wild.
And so he calls me, and he's like, he was stunned. He was like, he's like, I was a believer before because I saw the data, but like when you see that happen with, a young man who was out of options, it was transformed. It was an incredible experience. I get emotional when I talk about that because I get to see that all the time. But then I also get like frustrated when people try to get in our way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is happening all the time. And you have all these people that want to put us in this, I call it the swamp of all these swampy wellness products that mislead. They mix, fact with fiction to sell you with something. And then you have these kids that don't get the solution because somebody saw a YouTube video about us that said it didn't work by some, person that has no clue how to even do it. And I'm like, here we are. This kid would have been in a psychiatric ward.
Incredible.
And I'm like, I hear that all the time. So I get excited about that. Anyways, that was the only time I saw him excited. That was my whole point. It was like, he calls me and he's like, bro, changing lives, so.
Yeah, it's funny because my mind is immediately like spinning on the scientists that I've known that were witnessed something else. I actually have a story on that. I'll set that aside. I'll tell you after we're done recording. What about some of the double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled studies? Have you guys done any in that category specifically?
Yeah, I will tell you, a lot of so we have 40 plus published on the site right now. About half of those are peer-reviewed. Again, they were done during the processes of us going public. The banks and the different regulator bodies hired a group of an organization out of Canada, but it's a global organization that they would then source how to do the peer reviews. So there's about 20 plus that are peer reviewed on the site. And there was another, all of those two were also then reviewed by someone out of a university out in California. I can't share their name because I didn't hire them and they want money. Okay. And I'm like, come on, you've already done it. You already wrote the report. I have the report.
Yeah.
It's kind of frustrating, but, and I also didn't feel good about paying them money.
Yeah.
So, because I get called out on that. It's like, you paid for all these. I'm like, well, I didn't actually pay for these. I paid for the original study, but not the peer review. That's not how that works.
Basically, people are trying to say that you have.
Yeah, I bought the results.
You bought the results.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like all the people we mentioned before about the SAR rating.
Yeah.
You'll see they all use the laboratory in San Diego. Well, you paid for that spot, right? Yeah. And anyway, so we have a bunch of studies. We probably have 2 to 3 times of that aren't even on the website. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because it's been years of like this study. There's a lot of redundancy, and some became better and better controlled, and more things were. So it's just been an evolution over decades. And so what's on the site, I think, is a pretty good, range of things. Again, a lot of them are peer reviewed. What I was going to say though, I mentioned about double blind. A lot of the structure of the studies, especially the stuff out of Russia, is like default that. And it isn't always explicitly described in the setup because that's just standard practice.
Got it.
And that's one thing that we're
specifically with Russia?
With Russia. Yeah.
It's so interesting on that because a lot of the water research I've done specifically, where like Russia? A lot of the cutting edge stuff, especially around the Cold War era, is out of Russia.
Yeah.
Something about that. I don't know what, but it's interesting.
I have some thoughts on that. One thing I actually really appreciated RFK Jr. when he was on Rogan's podcast. He had acknowledged the fact that Russia was light years ahead when it came to EMF research. I was so thankful for that because, Dmitry is Russian, although he grew up in Israel and now lives in Canada, has his whole life, hasn't lived in Russia since he was a child. But his father, who also lives in Europe and Russia, that's just where you go. Like if you want the best research and you want the best people looking at it, it's difficult to not include Russia in that. Germany, a lot of Eastern Europe it would be in that category. And what I learned in this process is, if you, especially coming out of the Cold War era, it's rare to meet somebody in that age bracket that doesn't have some level of education of math and science. Mm-hmm. Like you will be challenged to find anybody that doesn't have some level of math and science background. It was just part of culture. Yeah. And because of that, and also keep in mind, it was a controlled environment where it's like, you're all now scientists. Yeah. So, and we're going to fund all of these things. Right. So it doesn't surprise me because it's like, they engineered these specific outcomes. You
will be athletes. Yeah, you are scientists.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. And so it makes sense. And so my point is the Russian default studies were already set up that way. And so we've had to go back through and have them describe the setup because we get asked that on some of those studies quite a bit. They do that because any anomaly, let's say you were trying to not perform, it would be captured. You would know. And the idea is you're performing a function and it's looking at the moment that you're processing information through the eye, through the optic, through there to the brain, and then out to perform the function. And it's measuring all of that through. And you're talking like milliseconds. So if you were to hesitate or do something, you can't consciously do it fast enough to not show up. Got it. Okay. Does that make sense? Got it. Okay. And so with ours, like with the UFC, for example, we were really looking at reaction time and I had a theory that we could improve reaction time. Turns out that EMF, if you can control it, and tune it, you can improve reaction time.
Wow.
And that's where we're able to demonstrate multiple times with
When
UFC.
you did these UFC studies, were they in an environment that had an inordinate amount of non-native EMFs, or was it
we
just like a
typically
standard
use the
environment?
cell phone, and I actually in hindsight wish I didn't use the cell phone, because it goes back to that point of like, I don't want to demonize these technologies. They're transformational in positive ways, in a lot of ways, if managed properly.
Right.
But it's the easiest tool I have to introduce man-made EMF in a controlled way.
And it's also the one that people have on them at all times.
So it's relatable.
It's relatable.
It's relatable.
Yeah.
But really what I'm doing is, from a scientific perspective, it's my input.
Yeah.
It's just, it's one of my conditions I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been a laptop or a Wi-Fi router I know near you. I didn't really care,
Yep.
but the cell phone was just easy to identify. We could control it. We could do that. We could introduce that. But that's what we typically used. And it wasn't next to the head though, by the way. And the reason why we don't put it next to the head is because mostly just for speed. Like, it didn't need to be that. We also discovered it needed to be close to the head to create the response. But every time you put it next to the head and you're touching the cap, it messes with it. We're not recording data, by the way, while the phone is there. What we're doing is, you're just putting it next to your head and you're just chilling, and there's nothing coming through it. It's just active. And then you take the phone away, and then we do the reading, because you don't want the cell phone to create interference with the reading itself.
Got it.
And so,
I see.
Does that make sense?
You're looking at the physiological effects on the body
after exposure
to the cell phone,
Yes.
because if not, then it's going to interfere with the devices that are measuring
it's recording
the physiology.
it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then you're doing that again with the cell
Aries.
phone, setting it away, but then having the Aries near the entire time and looking at the difference.
Yep.
And the difference is
always
consistent.
Yeah, always.
off
I will
charts.
tell you,
Wow.
there's a couple. Well, let me tell you this. The answer is yes. We always see positive effect. We always see negative effect of the cell phone, and we always see a positive effect. On the positive effect, what we're learning now, because we kind of came up with this standard way, we're like, okay, we've done this now dozens and dozens of times. And for almost everybody, the sequence didn't matter of baseline, cell phone exposure, and then cell phone plus Aries. That was like the kind of the formula that we used. We did reorganize it for some people, but at the end of the day, it didn't change anything. The outcome was always the same. And so in an effort to just systemize this, because we were doing lots of them, we came up with this 5 minutes of baseline, 5 minutes of exposure, and then 5 minutes of cell phone plus Aries. We did flip the order multiple times, but like I said, it didn't matter. But those were the three conditions, right? And one thing that we learned was people that had some other, let's say, nervous system dysfunction, let's say mold exposure, especially someone that had a really bad, this is the one that's been, it's happened twice. 2 people that had mold exposure. And then the third one was somebody that had a recent head injury, like severe concussion. Those 3 had, when we did the cell phone exposure, they were off the charts of sensitivity. Like one of the guys with the head injury, his irritability, he was doing the ERP test. His physical irritability, watching him was painful.
Wow.
He was so uncomfortable from the cell phone. And again, he didn't know what we were testing. He was completely in the dark, had no idea what we were testing, and also didn't know what he was doing. Like you just follow the instructions.
Yep.
You don't know what you're being tested for, and it's your brain.
I love that though,
Like,
because blinded, it takes out any element on part of the participant of placebo, nocebo.
Exactly. You can't, and like I said, you can't cheat it, because it would pick it up, and you're doing it over such a long period of time too. These ones are really long ones. These ones take multiple hours to do. Anyways, he was so visibly uncomfortable and painful, and talking about the sensitivity he had by doing the test. But then all the metrics were off the charts. This happened with the other gal too, with the mold. When you compare pre and post in the cell phone exposure, we had to use a different scale for the graph, because the baseline was like here. And when we were comparing, like, oh, that's interesting, you had to look closer to say, let's say this range was from like 0 to 10. This went like 0 to 50, because the range had to change to be able to fit it all on the screen. It was wild, dude. Like the changes in those people were different. Now, what we learned though was when they get lit up in that way, meaning the cell phone antagonizes the nervous system so much, it takes longer for them to come down.
Interesting.
And so because we had systematized it to like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, we don't know. You only know when he does it. Actually, what's crazy, when he does the test, it's like he gets a whole like history lesson on who you are. Like he peeks in your head and he's like, tell me when you were 3, were you in a car accident? Like he can get really in there and be like, you show some like signs of X, Y, and Z. Or like he's called out mold on each of these people before we even knew.
Wow.
Because of what it showed in the brain. So we've learned that period of time takes longer. On the flip side, when we had done the reverse order, where we had done cell phone plus Aries first, and then cell phone only, Aries had a lingering effect as well, meaning people didn't respond to the cell phone. So that was tripping me out. I was in this investor meeting doing this live demo. We were raising capital a few years ago. I'm doing this demo, and Aries was great. Like that part worked, but then he didn't respond to the cell phone. Well, I didn't know, and turns out that lingering effect of Aries tuning the system was stabilized for a period of time. And again, it'll be different for everybody, but we didn't know, and then we reversed the order later and corrected for it. So it was really interesting.
Specifically in these more sensitive people, or is that across the board?
I think it's dependent. Like you never know, right? Like it would be difficult for us to know, but I can tell you now, we've done that. I go back to what I said before. When I called the neuroscientist before and like said, hey, can I do this live? He said, I think so. No, I can hear me tell you why I think you can. And it turns out we can. I just said I wanted to replicate the peer-reviewed research. I just want to replicate the clinical stuff that we had done and just do demonstrations. And now we've collected so much data on this ourselves, in addition to the trials that we've done. And in the trials, it was the same thing. So that was my whole point, was like, well, if this is being done in a controlled environment, what happens when you're doing it in real life, like in a real life environment? What does it look like? Right. And so that's what we've been doing. And like I said, you can do it in a controlled, double blind, whatever. It hasn't changed the outcome at all. And like I said, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about like people with autism. Another podcaster, we had done the test with him before we did the podcast, and the doctor's like, do you have autism? Or have you been diagnosed? Or like, I can't remember exactly how he said it. And I'm like, do I need to go out? Like, is this a client, doctor client or whatever, a doctor patient privilege thing? And he's like, no. He's like, I've talked about it before. It's okay. He's like, unless I'm dying, like we can talk about anything. And so we go into this whole thing, and you see, and again, I'm not a doctor, but what I saw that day, and I think the doctor talks about it on this podcast. We could probably have the clip somewhere. That the part of the brain, especially the emotional side, it doesn't move and react the same way as, let's say, somebody that wouldn't say that has autism. I don't know if we diagnosed or how you word that, but someone that would say they have autism, there's parts of that emotional spectrum. There's parts that just don't operate the same way, and you see that in the brain activity.
They've established a correlation between what shows up in brain imaging to the behavior, essentially.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. Okay. And so that's why he was able to identify the autism.
That's wild.
Was because he sees it in the brain activity.
I could just imagine someone who's like not that. Like, wait, what?
I'm like stressed. I'm like, what? I'm just here to I don't care about that. Like, let's talk about cell phones, I
can step out.
Like what's going on? But the activation of when we use the Aries device of that same region. So baseline was like stable, didn't really move. Cell phone exposure actually reduced it even further. And then Aries actually made it move measurably over baseline.
Wow.
So basically the punchline is the activity in the brain, specifically in the emotional area, actually had a positive response. And so you basically gained function that didn't exist before.
Wow.
So again, not saying that that's like empirical, like that's not like proven anything. I'm just saying in that observation, we saw that. And we saw the same thing with somebody that had a recent concussion. There was a UFC fighter that we did a test with, and she didn't tell us that 2 days prior that she had a concussion from fighting. And so we're doing the scan, and this is a different doctor, and he's like taking a long time, and this is on camera, and I'm like what's up, like what's going on? And he's like, I don't know what the problem is. He's like, I'm getting a good reading, I've tested everything, I can't figure out what's going on. But what had happened was the region in the brain, number one, she didn't tell us he had a concussion. He sees it in the data and in the stuff that we were doing that she had a concussion. So, but we had already finished all the different tests. And so he's now compiling the data to now tell the story. So in the story, he's like, okay, it looks like I messed up because this region of the brain is like, has this weird activity that would not be associated with a normal functioning person. And so he says that, and she's like, well, I had a concussion. I probably should have told you that. Does that matter? He's like, yeah, of course it matters. You're looking at your brain. And so he's like, okay, that makes sense, because he tested and retested to make sure everything was working. So then the cell phone exposure, those same regions exacerbated, like it got even worse. Wow. And actually parts of the brain even reduced in activity to a level of like almost not functioning, wow. Right? Like a really like shut off experience. But then with the Aries like test portion of it, it all like the region of activity that the neurons that were firing, that part that looked inflamed reduced like exponentially. Wow. Like and it happened within minutes, right? And that's the part that he was tripping out about, was like, this doesn't make any sense because this looked the same, this looked the same, this one looks slightly worse, which made sense because it's being antagonized by the cell phone. But then the Aries one looks so dramatically different than the baseline that I don't have an explanation for it. And so again, anecdotal, but we recently did it hasn't been released yet, but we're in the middle of another peer-reviewed study with, I think 36 subjects. And in the intake, there were several that had recent brain trauma, physical brain trauma. And so we didn't put them in the other one, but we put them in another group, and then we tested them over time. This is a longer study over like not minutes, but over days and weeks. And their results are really, really compelling. So I'm really excited about that study. Wow. That's going to come out soon, because we have the head injury group, that we also have the baseline group, which is always interesting. But I'm like, when you're seeing these shifts, it's really cool. So that's where I go back to, like, I try to tie it back to like having a strategy on your body's electrical system, I believe should be a core pillar of health, because you're able to make giant shifts in how your body is working, and the job that it needs to do gets easier if you are managing that in a really good way, in a healthy way.
Yeah, and we're talking whether it's a professional athlete.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
It actually probably matters more for the person that's just moderately healthy, like the average dude that, or average woman or kids. We probably didn't spend any time talking about kids. I'd mentioned a little bit, but there is reason to take action with young kids, because the psychological aspect of it, plus the physiological aspect of it, it's a recipe for disaster.
Amen. Well said, man. I'm sold. I'm sold. No, I've been sold since before this, but this has been incredible. I have one final question that I wanted to circle back to, just on the geometry real quick, and we can wrap it up with anything else you'd like to share. And for those who are listening, watching, of course, as always, please check the show notes, and the show notes will have the website listed, so you can go in, check out all of the studies that they have published, as well as the discount code for the Way Forward members as well. But with the geometries, how were those discovered? Was that something where Dimitri, or what's his father's name?
Igor.
Igor. Okay. Yeah. Was he trying to mimic nature with that? Like, where did he discover these geometries and fractal patterns that are used in the Aries Tech?
Yeah. I think that's, if you were to go back, that's probably what most of the work was dedicated to, because it's difficult to test, right? You have to have a bunch of human subjects. You have to figure out, okay, what are we testing? Because the body, the human, becomes the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right. And so, is it working? Is it not working? Is it working? Is it not working? And one of the paths to it, that, I've had discussion on, because I had kind of a similar question. This was probably the best of the stories, was taking essentially a human cell and cutting small slices and understanding what the cell actually looks like. And it didn't get you to the answer, but it informed a place to start, or a place to restart. Was like, okay, let's just look at what's happening. One thing that will help people make sense of this is the idea of using geometry to shape and manipulate electromagnetic radiation is not a new thing. It's not a novel thing at all, actually. You can look at, literature from the first shuttle that went to space, simply using physical objects to reshape and control energy to protect electrical systems was a big part of the space shuttle, because space radiation and space EMF is different than on Earth, and it messes with the communications. So they would use metamaterials and these geometries to manipulate electromagnetic radiation. So that's not a new thing at all. That's actually like antenna design has a lot to do with that. So you weren't starting from zero, but you were like, okay, if we wanted to be in this range of frequencies, what would it look like? And what would the shape need to be? Because sometimes people say stuff about the shape and they're like, oh, that looks like all these different shapes.
Sacred geometry and
things
when I'm on an ayahuasca sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony.
So some things like that. And they wanted to give it a meaning that's just has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I'm like, this is actually just science and math. You want to make it something else, as if I'm trying to be woo-woo and I'm trying to be everything but that. I'm trying to tell you.
It's interesting though, because previously, science was synonymous with spirit in many ways, and now they're sort of coming back around to bridge the two again.
I think if you go back and you look at some of the ancient civilizations, the idea of energy and manipulating energy and capturing energy and organizing energy to do things, I think starts to make, and I'm not a researcher in any way, but I have heard some of these theories, especially when it comes to like the pyramids and different things like that, where we're like, we have a lot more questions than we do answers. And people want to understand some of these things. Geometry and energy and the relationship that the two have together starts to make a lot of sense. Yeah. So where did this stuff come from? I don't know, but we're not the first civilization to use them.
Right.
So, and I also like, one of my simplest things that I tell people is we are trying to create smooth circular like patterns. So this shape is circular because of that. It's not square because we're trying to avoid square
That
waves.
is so wild you said that, because before you said that, when you were talking about civilizations that have used this, my mind immediately went to how in our modern buildings, because I don't think people, even like materials aside, the shapes of them, I think, are not conducive to health.
Straight lines don't exist in nature.
Straight lines don't exist in nature. Exactly. Yeah. I have a friend who builds like dome architecture, and he just talks about like the resonant feeling that you have when you're in them. And that makes so much sense when it comes to this technology now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And like I said, there's some of that stuff informed it, but then refined over time, right? Really the math refined it. You'll hear me on other interviews or if I'm kind of hanging out with you, we're having a meal, I'll talk about like, I loved the movie Oppenheimer because so much of that was their stress about their math equations before they, detonated the bomb.
Yeah.
And they're like proofs and like just trying to prove through math that it was going to work. And then they had the moment, right? And then they were just all so excited. And like, that's a little bit about this experience with Aries has been math, result, then math to then prove the result again. It's been interesting because we had a moment recently where we've published the math. Like I said, we've won awards for the math. We've presented the math at some of these amazing, it's been peer reviewed. Our math equations and the method has been peer reviewed. And recently, when we were able to visualize the wave, part of that visualization to then see the geometry of it was the physical representation of the math. And so they were able to now basically detonate the bomb, then go back and look at the math again.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that visualization allowed them to go back and look at the proof again and then say that was right. And so that's exactly what happened. And this has just happened in the last, handful of weeks and months.
Wow.
And so it's really cool stuff. But like I said, you can geek out on like that aspect of it. And yes, there's that relationship between like stuff that we don't understand and the quantum and all that kind of stuff. But there's also, this is just rooted in science and physics. It really is. Like, people want to make it more complicated, they can. That's fine. But I try not to.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we know. These are the facts. We took existing scientific principles, stacked them together, organized them away to create a specific outcome that we wanted. That's all we did. We didn't invent anything, really. We just took what already existed, put it together to create this outcome.
It's cool because you can talk in both languages, though,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, man, this has been epic.
Yeah,
So,
good.
yeah, thank you for being here. Is there anything else you want to share related to Aries or anything else as we're closing up?
I do encourage people. I said this kind of in the middle, like, be aware of the environment. Be aware of like with my kids, like my kids are all older now. I think my oldest is 24, and then the next one's going to be 23 this month, and I have a 21-year-old and then an 18-year-old. So 4 kids in 5 years. And the one thing that I've been consistent with them in their ear about is everything in your head has been put there by somebody else or something else. And I think about that with our bodies too. Everything, you have control over so much of what goes into your body, whether that's food, water, light, electromagnetic radiation. To have some sort of thoughtful approach or filter to say, I want to be better, you have control over that. And I would encourage people to just learn more about how the body works. There's a really good book. It's really old. It's called The Body Electric, I believe.
Yeah.
It's written, I think,
Robert Becker, right?
Yeah, 1985. I think it was redone some time ago.
I don't know if it's on the I have like my
excellent
decoration books on the shelves.
Yeah, it's excellent, dude. And that's a great place. Like, just use ChatGPT to say, give me the Cliff Notes, right? Like, give me the summary of that.
Mhm.
And you'll be like, wow, we've actually known about this for a long time. We've known about how the body works. We know that electromagnetic fields are important to the body, and being thoughtful about our environment. Like, we've known that. And so I would just encourage people to, as much as we need to filter what's going into our brain, that shapes who we are, shapes our thoughts, shapes, everything that we do. And it kind of really either strengthens us or weakens us as a person just by what's going into our brain, like the thoughts and the words, the marketing, whatever that is, we have control over that. But also, and there's more and more that's being talked about, whether that's plastics or it's, the glues or the chemicals or whatever. There's so much of that. The air fresheners that we have, whatever it is. And we're more and more aware of that. I would just make sure that people spend the time to do the research on electromagnetic radiation.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a big word. We don't have a sexy word for it yet. At some point we'll come up with a new language that makes it less clunky.
Yeah.
And then people will start to adopt it. But don't wait for that moment. Don't wait for the marketing engine to take over and you're just buying a $5 pair of blue light glasses that don't work, or a $10 red light therapy, tool, and you really need the $25,000 one. Like, you can do something about it now. And I would just encourage people to think about that, take some steps around just reducing your exposure. If you don't want to buy Aries, I totally supportive of that, but at least be aware and make it a choice. And that's what I would encourage people to do. And just, you have control to filter what's in your environment and just be thoughtful about that.
Awesome. Josh, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
man.
for having me, man.
Epic.
This is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.